Hello there, ladies and gentlemen and unicorns. Welcome to another stream. Thank you so much for dropping by. As some of you might have noticed, we had some technical difficulties. And this time I blamed my computer. But since I said in the chat, because I'm a pro streamer, trademark, I realized that maybe I shouldn't have my Dropbox sync 2 gigabytes of files as I'm trying to get some video packets through the same cable. So yeah, once I fix that, everything is working fine. Look at this, so many people telling me that audio and video are A+, and that I'm an A+ streamer. Well, there's no need to be sarcastic, but thank you. So wonderfully, for one of the few times that I got almost everything sounding right, looking right, and I might even try to look blankly ahead, because this is, like I said, where where I repositioned the camera before, and I had the camera straight in front of me before. So if I appear a bit confused, this is because I'm looking for the camera. Maybe I should put a unicorn or something on there, maybe just some blinking lights so that I know where to look at. Anyway, thank you so much for dropping by. Last week, as you've noticed, I wasn't in a position to stream because I was just wasted. I had to attend a certain event, and for that I needed to get up earlier than usual, which means for me it's like for you people who usually go to bed at like 11 p.m. It's like getting up at 1 a.m. and then have an entire day. And this completely messed me up for the entire week. But yeah, now I'm here, and look at this, the hype train is going. Woohoo! Thank you so much. 94% until to the next level. So I think there's 6% we can get all together. I have no idea what this means. I'm not that pro streamer like to entirely know what's going on, but there are unicorn flags on my channel. Apparently there's one emote that is the Ashley unicorn, her. So yeah, wonderful of you to start the hype train going, because this cute little channel here could really need it. So yes, last week I had to postpone the stream to this week, but here we are. So what's going to happen today in this wonderful stream? Well, I'm having a great program for you tonight. For one thing is I'm going to show my Ludum Dare 47 game now that I've played all my patrons' games and some other people who submitted their games. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm playing my game, and then of course I'll be doing the code review of the GameMaker code of my Ludum Dare entry. And I can already hear some of you opening a new tab, and now my tab is on mute, and oh, now it's closed. Okay, bye. So yeah, this is going to be a more programming focused stream this time around. And as always, I thought those kind of videos where I'm reviewing my own code and explaining myself, I'm justifying myself in front of the entire internet, is mostly for people who download my source code because they're curious and want to don't understand what's happening. 100% the hype train is real, and it's raining pixels. Hype, thank you so much. This is wonderful. Thank you. So yeah, these videos are more or less a justification of how to deal with my crappy source code for anyone who's interested in those. So again, Red Hermit, thank you so much for gifting subscriptions to everyone. This is so nice. Thank you. Okay, so let's switch over to the screen. Yeah, now it works. I have a different aspect ratio, I think. Well, it's not aspect ratio, it's just a different zoom factor. So I think because I repositioned the camera, because I've noticed that the longer I talk, the more I just sink down into myself and look more like Mr. Burns. So this is why I adjusted the camera appropriately. So for those who don't know, and I don't think there are many people here who don't know, yeah, my game for Ludum Dare 47 was Anomaly 47, and here are some screenshots. So yeah, this is the Ludum Dare page. didn't finish everything that I wanted to incorporate, but yeah, we will see, and I will, like I said, I will explain myself what's been going on. So the description is: you gain consciousness after something happened, something bad. All you can remember was running an experiment on the loop station as things went south. Uncover the mystery, stay alive, and get out of the loop if you can. Yeah, out of the loop, that was the theme for this Ludum Dare, and I have 2 loops in my game. One is a time loop and the other is the locality of the setting where it's this looping space station. So features hand-drawn art style, moody music, and new crew each time. So yeah, the movement is WASD, space or enter to confirm, and E to interact, and alt and enter to toggle full screen. So yeah, everything was made by me in a frantic 48 hours, and at this point I should know not to focus on polishing the art first, but yeah, here we are. So yeah, I only have one release up, that is 1.0.0.14. That is the initial release. And yeah, let's just download the exe file, the exe. There we go. I just drop it there on my desktop. And yeah, there is audio, if I haven't stressed this before. And the first thing is when you hit Alt and Enter to switch to full screen without the menu bar there, then it already starts the game, because it says press enter to start it if you alt and enter. Yeah, it's one of those games. So yes, this is the title screen, and again a lot of of effort went into this, because this is a 3D rendering, because I made it in Maya when the jam started, because apparently I had time to go to Maya and do some basic 3D modeling, because of course the most important thing when you make a game is making the assets and not programming or anything. Oh, thank you so much for the 500 bits and the unicorn, Red Hermit. Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for the hype train. It's still moving. It's thundering down the tracks, and I think we will have a Back to the Future 3 situation there, where once it reaches 88 miles per hour, how many kilometers per hour this is, your guess is as good as mine. And once it hits this, it will vanish and disappear and come back in the future and destroy the DeLorean. Wait, no, that's bad. I take it back, but I imagine this hype train like this Wild Western styled steam engine going down way too fast. Wonderful. Okay, so yeah, probably the intro music has faded, so it's okay when I switch over to full screen there. What happened? All I remember was running an experiment with antimatter and then waking up. Uh-oh, looks like I've been out for quite a while. My precious suit is running low on oxygen. Better do something about that. Space or enter. So yeah, as you can clearly see, we got this little oxygen bar and it is running low. But whenever we want to examine something, the time stops, or at least you don't drain any oxygen, because since this is a game where you just go around and look at things and interact with things, I thought I don't want to punish my players when they're not reading fast enough for the game. So what is this? Blast residue. Something bad happened here, something real bad. Yeah, we've established this. Looks like the entire station has been depressurized. I hope the others are okay. So now I'm teasing that there are others. And I think I am about to start over. Why? Yeah, I'm running out of oxygen. And I received a level 1 hype train emote. This is amazing. I can share it. And there we go. Choo-choo! This is great. So yeah, I've all tapped out of the game and yeah, you failed, but maybe there is still hope. So it starts as again. And I think there are some notes, and one thing that I'm proud of is that when you examine something, it's possible to change or to have a different text there. And emotes are being delivered to supporters. Wonderful! So the emotes are going out to everyone who's involved. This is great. Thank you so much. So, Anomaly SCP-LD47. Yeah, just a little joke there. So researcher Hisex notes on something called Anomaly SCP-LD47, so this is why it changed here, the label. Mostly illegible, but one passage sticks out. Hits every 97 seconds. It's crucial to... That's my handwriting, but I don't recall writing any of this. So yeah, there is the first name in the game that's appeared, and this is researcher Hizek, and apparently it's my handwriting, so we are researcher Hizek. By the way, the names are the names of my patrons, as some of you might have already noticed. I think that's the word that I was looking for. Some of you might have noticed, and it's different each time you start the game, but we will see this in the code review. So okay, let's do something about the oxygen situation, and there is the pressure suit. So each time you interact with this pressure suit, it loads up your oxygen, because like I said, since this is a time loop and it will start over and over again, I really want to make sure that players don't miss getting the oxygen here. There's still some oxygen in the tank. That should buy me some time to figure out what's going on here. So yeah, what is going on? And the first thing people notice are the crappy controls probably and the colliders where it's easy to get stuck. And the next thing is that there is something counting down the seconds until Anomaly. And also what I was a little bit afraid of was that people maybe don't understand that that those walls are not rigid. They are rigid here, but they can just move through them, and this is why I have those scratches here, just to hint at you can't pass through here. So also there's some this looks incorrect that I'm below this piece of debris here, but yeah, never mind. So debris, on closer examination, this is just waste and junk that's been piling up. Yeah, this same thing here with those scratches there on the ground, just to get people moving. And I'm also very proud of that we're switching here when we are leaving one module and entering the next one, that it also switches here. So, and here we are at the life support unit. So what does this do? Well, it's off. I mean, it wouldn't do much against the vacuum, but I could use it to refill my suit's oxygen tank. I should be able to divert aux power to it in the C1 module. At least this is what I was hoping for, that players would go this way and then see the life support unit and then see the C1 module. Look at this, I'm in B1. So if they've paid attention, so now in B2, so probably if we go this direction we will end up in C sooner or later. At least this is, as always, we know this as game designers. We all know how we want players to experience our game, and the first players who miss the pressure suit and then go this direction here, and everything is not as intended, but I think this is okay, and now we're dead. And fun fact, I didn't plan on this, that you would run out on oxygen exactly the same time as this anomaly would hit. Really, this is just a coincidence from the values there, but once I noticed it, I kind of liked it, because you really have to do something about the oxygen situation there. So okay, now we can go back to the lab support unit, but actually we don't have to go back. We can also do whatever is needed without examining the life support unit, because I was figuring that as a player, now you know that there's a life support unit and you don't have to trigger an event that it's now possible to start it. So here we are in the sick bay apparently. So this is the sick bed, and nobody's been sick or injured lately. But what is the spill? Blood? Question mark? Nothing on the sheets, but the floor is covered with oil, blood, something else. What's going on here? And the next thing here is sick bed. We've seen this. Is there anything else? The med controls, the station monitors. This station monitors the vitals of the person being treated. It's off. As you can see there is nothing really that you can do, sadly. Like I said, I had some more ideas where you just need to interact more and learn more about the station, but in the end I was just lucky to get something going on. So here is Dr. Kislitsin's research, and it looks like Dr. Kislitsin was running stress tests on the generator. But why? Look at this, I'm opening other bottle of mystery ale there, and the power generator controls. With these controls I should be able to divert some power to the life support unit. Done. Now I can fill my suit's oxygen tank there. So giving the player the next puzzle or the next crumb in the crumb breadcrumb trail. I think that's a word. Trail of breadcrumbs. I think this is how web developers call it. Anyway, so at least that you know what you to do should do next. And the main power generator was pushed beyond limits. It appears there had been... Yeah, there had been a surge recently. It's still running in limp mode. I wonder for how much longer. Okay, so this is just flavor text because it will never break or anything, but I just, yeah, I'm at this point I'm toying a bit with the players that they don't know if the power generator is going to become an issue later down the line, and in this version, no, it's not. So now it's working again, and wonderful stale station air fills my oxygen tank. So now it reads life support unit online, and now the bar for the oxygen has vanished because now it says we got enough oxygen in our tank, so it's not going to be an issue. So yeah, let's continue for the next 15 seconds. 14 seconds here, and look at this, we got a space toilet. When you gotta go, you gotta go. I don't gotta, let's hope it stays that way. And Starkillerfish says it's my friend Ben, so I haven't been here a while, so apparently I've managed to sneak in a cameo of Ben here. So 2, 1, and now the anomaly hits. What? Where am I? When am I? Everything is just that it was 97 seconds ago before that anomaly. Even my precious suit is low on oxygen again. Damn. Okay, so usually there should have been some kind of visual effect going there, but it didn't happen, so I don't know why. This is bad. Okay, so now we're starting the player, but this time even we, not only as the player but also in the game, we know it has been reset. So and we still need to take care of our oxygen, but now we know that, yeah, the pressure suit, we can fill up the pressure suit. Let's go the other round then from the others. Now the generator controls. Actually, you don't have to fill your spacesuit. Once you know the game and you know what you're doing, you can beat it within one loop, essentially, if you're quick. So yeah, let's fix the life support, or at least fix up our suit, and let's continue in this direction there. Again, the scratches here to let you know that you can walk through here. And look at this little kitchenette, it's the galley, the station's food prep area. Dr. Kislitsin is a pretty decent cook. So we know of ourselves, we are researcher Hizek, and there's some Dr. Kislitsin. Food storage containers and compartments, we had been running low on coffee for weeks now. Yeah, just a little in-joke, nothing interesting there. So what is here? There is the terminal, the station's recreational terminal. It's turned off, and that's good. If it weren't lacking power, I could go for a round of solitaire right now. Seems fitting. And there's a period missing. So yeah, what is going here on this table on the dining area? 2 plates, a spilled bottle, and 1 instant meal, which would be mine. My guess is that Kislitsin got up and left. Okay, so what is going on with Kislitsin? Something is irking them the wrong way. They are the who cook the meals, but our character is using the instant meal instead of the cooked meal. Is our character assuming maybe they're being poisoned, or yeah, what's up with that? What's up with that? Okay, let's continue here further. And this is apparently the habitat area, the crew quarters, and the shower is we can't use much water and the pipes are clogged. Holmberg once joked that all we get is a star shower. Ha, I guess. So Holmberg is another character here. So, and here are 4 bunks, and the first one that we look at is this one. Research specialist Hizek's bed, that would be mine. So now, for those players who weren't paying attention, now, yeah, we are Hizek. I wonder why I chose to sleep in my precious suit. Yeah, I wonder as well. Okay, let's examine this one here. Mission Specialist Holmberg's bunk. Mission Specialist Holmberg's bed, a bit rumpled. I wonder what Holmberg keeps hidden in the locker. Okay, so is this the locker? No, it's not, but it says Holmberg's locker now. It's locked. Holmberg probably locked it with that weird domino-shaped key. Yeah, this is just also a little throwaway or, well, cameo of the what's it called? Domino House, of course, the game from Lilo McCormick, or I'm saying McCormick, but it's just Lilo Cormick. So it's a wonderful puzzle adventure game that really tests your attention and how to decode cryptic clues. So yeah, my shout out to Domino House. I had lots of fun with that game, and this is why I have here a domino. And here is one of the problems of this game. So it says here with that weird domino-shaped key, and you see here there's a domino. So how do we get there? The problem is we can't get there. I'm not quite sure why I have this key here, this domino here, because you can't get it. It's hidden somewhere else. But let's finish up here with the bunks. This is Dr. Kislitsin's bunk bed with specks of what appears to be dried blood. Could it be Dr. Kislitsin who was in the sickbay? Who knows? All mysterious, so mysterious. And Kirsibu says finding the domino key is what stumped me the most. Yeah, you probably weren't the only one, and I'm really sorry for this utterly misleading clue there. This was just a red herring that led to nowhere, and I assume you would get stuck trying to squeeze past the space shuttle because you're not supposed to squeeze past the space shuttle, and then yeah, I could really imagine that this was going to be a very frustrating experience. I'm sorry. So yeah, this is Commander Red Hermit's bunk. What a nice coincidence. So Commander Red Hermit, as orderly as ever, military grade. So we got a commander, a mission specialist, a researcher, and what was the other one? I've already forgot. It's a doctor. So yeah, we still got 11 seconds, but let's get the domino key. That is of course this one here, the domino, and it also lights up when you find something that you can pick up. Yeah, like I said, this is usually you wanted to have everything that you could interact with to have some sort of glow, or yeah, just to let people know what you can interact with and what not. Otherwise you would just stumble around getting stuck on the colliders. So Mission Specialist Holmberg's domino-shaped key, I think it's for their locker, but we still got just a couple of seconds till the anomaly, and now it has this flash and this fade. So another time loop is complete, but I'm still holding domino. So this is the big mechanic there, that anything that you have on yourself, when it loops, you still keep, you're still carrying. And it also says here in the UI, enhance domino. So yeah, let's get the power up and running again, that we can take care of the life support system. Yeah, another thing is that I'm not too happy with the controls. They are very stiff 8-way controls, because those are the controls that Rampage had, my game before this one, and I just took the code from the game before. So now we're still holding the domino key, and what I'm semi-proud of is that of course the things that you're holding there is no domino key there anymore, because you're holding it right now. So this is what changes when the time loops. Anything that you're holding, of course, is not there where it was before. So now we can open the locker, and it's a data memory. I can read it on the computer in the mission control module. So if you haven't been to the mission control module, and now of course we drop the domino, because now we can pick it up again. Mission Specialist domino shaped key, I think it's for the locker, and yeah, we can only hold one item. So it should be able to read the memory core in the mission controls module. Again, it's really emphasizing what you should be doing. So let's continue this way of the loop. And again, I'm really sorry there for those colliders. I'm not too happy with what turned out here. And look at this little debris here, just twisting there in space. And what is this? Another pressure suit. This oxygen tank is punctured. It's empty. Why would somebody do such a thing? Okay, so something is really going on here, because now look at this. There's a lifeless body, and it's Commander Red Hermit's corpse. Oh god, it's the commander. Looks like they wanted to get to the shuttle, but the oxygen tank is punctured, and it doesn't look like an accident. Okay, somebody wanted people not to get off the station there by messing with their oxygen tank. So what the hell happened here? Is there anything else we can interact here? No. And yeah, what's with the shuttle? Yeah, you can't squeeze past the shuttle to the domino key. I'm really sorry. So the cargo shuttle, my way out of here. More or less giving players, spelling it outright what they need to do. Get out of here. Locked. I need an officer's or pilot's key card. So who's an officer or pilot? Well, someone who's called commander, perhaps. So yeah, still got 3 seconds, but we're still holding Holmberg's memory core. So, and now my character said, yeah, this looping gives them a headache. So yeah, I just as we will see in the code review, I try to also spell out for the players, that the players know that their character is aware of this thing constantly looping and looping. So yeah, let's not bother with the power generator anymore. Let's just keep moving, and now we are in the mission control and data core. So there is not much else that we can do. There is this data core access doors, but somebody changed the password to the main data cores, and this is one of the biggest plot holes in this one here, because once we learn of the password changes between time loops, which doesn't make any sense, that there's a different password each time the anomaly hits. Maybe there could be something to it, but it was not intentional, so this is one of the biggest problems there. I bet the password is unicorn, Lady Mistleaf says, and you might be surprised what the password is. So yeah, what are those things here? I don't think there is a lot we can interact with, but the data access terminal, and now we insert this Holmberg's memory core, and it reads log 130188 mission specialist Holmberg. Hizek is losing it. So I hope that players counted one and one together, as we say in German. If you just count or just combine the clues that are pretty obvious. And it says, we were forced to take matters into our own hands. What does this mean? If you read this, it means we have failed. Apparently, they have failed. Everything is yours for the taking. Here's the key to the loop's memory core. And no, the password is not unicorn. It's two sets of 4 random numbers and 2 letters. Go to hell! So are we the ones that Holmberg expected to find this, or aren't we? But at least they gave us the data core access door password. And oh no, what happened here? This is where Red Hermit, not the Red Hermit in the game, but patron and wonderful saint of the show here, says that yeah, he had a true jump scare moment there, and since this was not intentional, that this reveal here would be some sort of jump scare, I'm very happy that it spooked you more than it ought to have worked, so thank you. Oh no, what happened here? Well, looks like there's a dead person. The remains of mission specialist Holmberg. I can't tell whether it's suicide or not. Yeah, Holmberg just locked themselves in the data memory core. Why? And now they're dead. But there's something next to them, and it's Commander Red Hermit's keycard. Why is Holmberg having Red Hermit's keycard? So many mysteries, my god. The keycard should open many doors, including the shuttles. So we still got 56 seconds, so I hope we can make it to the shuttle. And there's the final model that we haven't visited, and there is not much there because clearly I didn't have much time for this one left. But there's one thing that you might notice is there on the upper left screen there's also probably a corpse floating around. And for those who paid a lot of attention, there was also another hidden corpse there in the on the station. So it's 4 beds, but 5 people, including us. Who was the visitor? Why was there a visitor? Was there even a visitor? Were they aware of it? And so on. But before running out of oxygen, let's hit the cargo shuttle and escape Anomaly 47, and that's that's the game. Congratulations, you've escaped, and as always I've spent too much time probably on those finishing screens, but as someone who played a lot of the old NES games, it was really rewarding to see some kind of different screen in the end when you manage to beat a game. And one of the games I'm still angry with is, in that respect, is the Jurassic Park game from Ocean for the Super Nintendo, because it had this great scanned in title screen of the Jurassic Park gate there, and I thought, oh my god, this is some A-level graphics. And when you die, you get this screen grab of the raptor, and it counts down 9, 8, bong. And I thought, oh my god, this is so cool. Even when you die, how cool will it be when you manage to beat the game? And a couple of years back I beat the game finally on an emulator, and it reads just congratulations for escaping Jurassic Park, and then it has this stylized mode 7 effect of a stylized Isle Nublar, where you just with helicopter sounds, and that's it, and then it bumps you to the high scores. And I was so pissed. So this is why I wanted to make sure that my games, even if you fail or if you succeed, you get at least a little bit of eye candy there. Yeah, and that was Anomaly 47. Thank you so much. Now the boring part starts, where I'll be looking at the code or how the entire project is set up in GameMaker. Red Hermit writes in the chat, serious jump scare. It was moody and great. Thank you so much. Lady Mistleaf says, I expected some Venom-like creature to come jumping at me after this. My god, this is a great idea. Maybe I should have introduced a baddie that's hunting you across the station. But one of the reasons why I didn't do this, well, the first reason is no time. No, I didn't think of it, and then I have no idea how to do this properly with pathfinding and so on. And the other thing is, I tried to play Alien Isolation, but shit my pants. The first time I had this alien pop up, and I thought, I really want to play this game, but I can't because I'm so afraid of the alien. I'm not a big fan of those games where you are being hunted and you can't do anything about it. I mean, I would very much enjoy making such a game, but I couldn't play it myself. I couldn't even play far into Slender, the 8 pages, because I'm too scared. This is one of the games that it's not an exciting tingle down my spine. So, ooh, I'm being hunted. This is so scary. No, I'm scared, and I'm not having fun playing these kinds of games. So, but this is a good idea to have something there else on the station. Red Hermit says, great features, touches you included specifically for the player. Oh, thank you. I like the scratches on the floor to show moving in between rooms and that the timer pauses. Thank you so much for picking up on those little things. Again, with me, it's always spending way too much time on tiny little things. I open up now the GameMaker project there, and Lady Misleaf says the blood was scattered and the body looked so mangled. Yeah, it's probably because I'm not too good at drawing people, so I think this is the best that I could come up with. And yeah, I applied some more decals there just to make it more look like, yeah, somebody blew their brains out or had their brains blown out. My god, this is gruesome. Remco++ also says, and then also the name of the monster after one of the patrons. Yeah, maybe this would be, or maybe just an amalgamation of some of the patrons' names for the monster, perhaps. Or we just call it Anomaly 47, because that's the name of the monster. Okay, so here we are inside my beautiful GameMaker 2 project, and let's open up all those little bins that I have here of things that are going on. First, let's have a look at the eye candy first. So people are just interested in looking at interesting visual things, can see all those, and then and then leave when I get into the code. Okay, yeah, we get sounds from music, just fail, in-game, the title screen, the win, so it's just 4 short pieces of music, and we got some effects. For the anomaly hitting, just some bleeps and beeps, just sound clip where it just says click and those kind of mechanical noises, then oxygen and the scrape. So excuse me, yeah, not many sound effects there. And the sprites, of course, I got cards, which I call because they're just screen filling cards overlaid on top of everything, because as we all know, during a game jam you really don't want to have especially in GameMaker, you don't want to place this text there in code. You just make a GIF or, well, in this case, a PNG out of it and be done with it. And this is also for when you fail and for the title screen. So even there, the controls on the title screen, they are just part of the image. And if you do this, pro tip, use the same fonts in the game as you use on your pictures, otherwise it looks not that coherent and a little bit, this, what's the word, when something is uncoherent, essentially. So Medilislif is going to bed. Thank you so much for dropping by and at least watching me play the game. Okay, so finally, maybe this might be interesting what the level looked like here, the room, the station, because this is, I think, one of my most elaborate GameMaker levels there. And this is how the station looked here in my editor. And for reference, this square here, this rectangle here on top is 1 view size. So it's fairly big. It's fairly big, as you can see it. And it got here, it's made up of lots of layers here, and those layers that I just switched on are the control layers, as I like to call them. Essentially, those are just the colliders that you shouldn't be seeing when you're playing them. You got here the Modulus Zones, and those are the zones that once you collide with one of those big things here, it just changes the UI in which module you currently are. So this is how I did this. It's like trigger volumes in Unity. Then I got the Interactables. Those are things that you can interact with. Yes, there is even an interactable thing here. Because yeah, as you can see there, I was just moving bits and pieces around of the sprites. So yeah, this is also why I have some interactable zones here that aren't accessible. And the other thing that might be interesting is here are a lot of space corpses, but when you play the game, those are just little pieces of debris. And the thing is, it's just one and the same object, but depending on which enum you set, we will get to this, it just displays a different sprite there. And of course we got the horrible colliders there. And as always, my colliders are just boxes that I rotate and place, and pretty much anything that is a collider is you collide with naturally. And I also got colliders for walls, which are just the modular walls, the outer collision boxes. If I switch them on and off, oh, those were the interactables, the collider walls. Pretty much anything that's not part of what's in a certain room in the station, because I was moving rooms around, or what's inside certain modules, and I wanted to have this independent there of the outer walls. So yeah, and the Modulus Zones, yes, we have here the blocker. Yeah, the blocker is just this one. The jump scare essentially is, no, there is the blocker, this one here. It's just one layer that has a sprite on top that gets removed when certain conditions are met. Then, of course, we got a lot. Well, let me hide all those control layers there. Then I got lots and lots of decals that I just applied there one after the other. So essentially, the background is just a solid color. Then I got here the basic layout of the floor. This is pretty much, yeah, the floors, duh. Then what is the ground, everything that's on the ground, like, yeah, as we have here, like those stripes here, or in this case, this puddle of blood, this desk here for some reason, because the layout is like this. Everything is on the ground is drawn first, then the player, and then everything that's on top of the ground. So the next thing is instances low, that are instances that are also on the ground below the player, and instances, and also there is also the player character, so everything at the same height as the player, or the same depth as the player, and the connectors, which don't do much here, and sprites top, so everything that the player could hide behind or is drawn behind. Yeah, otherwise it would look weird if players collide with a wall, but they still stick into the wall, but then it draws on top of the wall, so it feels like, is the player now floating on top of everything? So yeah, this is just my setup. And finally, the module's background, yeah, is just to show you, each module is this one sprite here, which yeah, by the way, like I said, everything is hand drawn. Oh dear, there goes my notes. And just to show you, because I think this might be interesting if you see it. Yes, this is how the room looked like drawn on paper, and I did it twice and just copied. I'm not quite sure why. Of course, yeah, that I could just align them like this. That I knew how to make this shape here, this triangle shape in between, and that I could draw it as well. And I probably have this also on a sheet here. Yeah, by the way, this is what the concept looked like. And those are some more sprite sheets. So yes, everything was drawn on paper. Let me just pick up there. Hi. Yeah, I had to pick up my little index cards, because those I used to shuffle around when I was designing with the layout, essentially, where a module should connect to another one. So yeah, this was, let me undo this here. So this was basically the layout of everything. Okay, so maybe let's bide our time and look at some more sprites. Yeah, here this is just the background sprite of for the floors essentially. Then here I called those the decals. They are just sprites that get drawn on top of everything. We got here walls, different corners. Yeah, it's nothing that interesting, but it's all those little pieces that you need there. And I got helpers, as we've seen there, for the collider, anything that's interactable. So I just gave them those little colors. This doesn't make any sense. Those different colors that I know in the level editor, as you've seen before, at a glance, what is doing what. And I also got here this zone. I don't think that I've used it for anything, but it's still a remnant of what I've used before. And Curio says, I really like the art style. Oh, thank you. Yeah, initially I wanted to draw it in Photoshop with my tablet, but then I realized, I probably spent too much time trying to pick the right pen and then make everything pretty, and I wasted a lot of time as it was going the handcrafted style. And then I thought, maybe just go all in there in that respect. Did you scan them to get them onto the PC, or just snap a photo of them? For this time, I actually scanned them with my beautiful brother scanner printer all in one machine. The reason for this was that when you add something later, the problem is when you photograph something, you hardly get the same distance to your subject, so the sizes vary. And when you want to make a sprite sheet or a tile set, you always need to have it, when you scan it in the right size. And this is why I've scanned everything in at 300 dpi and knew, okay, when I draw something that is the same size on paper, it will be exactly the same size in Photoshop, and then I just can easily rescale it so that it works relatively to the other things that I've drawn before on a different sheet of paper. So everything is scanned in. Yes, this cards, environments, helpers, and then we got the items. So it just got 4 items. This is called just rectangles. It's called 24 rectangles. This is 25 chip card, 29 pack, whatever this is, and of course the domino tile. And the player, still got here like I said, since I used the template for top-down movement from my previous Ludum Dare game Rampage, I still got here 2 unused sprites for the player dead and the player hit. Because the player doesn't die in here, at least you don't see it, and player also won't get hit from anything, so those are the old sprites. But I got here the player idle and the player interacting, which is just the arm extended, and the player walking, which is 17 frames. And I'm very happy with how this turned out. And by the way, this was also drawn here on paper. This is the animation sheet, and as you can see here, it looks different because I thought there is so much white on this suit that I will draw it essentially in reverse, and then just invert the colors. So everything that is black on this sheet of paper, it's white in the end on the final animation. And if you wonder how I got this fluid animation with my, let's say, non-existent animating skills, I used a little trick, but I don't want to get into details because this will be revealed in the upcoming post-mortem for this one. But I'm quite happy with how this turned out. That it really looks good, because we all know my animation for Zocker, which was also a Ludum Dare game top down. It really looked like someone who just opened GameMaker Studio for the first time and had no idea how to draw a person walking from top, because this was exactly my experience. I had opened GameMaker before, but I have never drawn or animated a person walking from top. So this is why I needed a different approach for this one here. And finally, I got here UI, and here this is the UI. This is just rotates depending on where you are in the station, and the sidebar itself has, because again I didn't want to spend a lot of time trying to align text programmatically. This is also just a PNG that reads location, system status, in hands, and seconds until anomaly, and everything, only the dynamic text is actually programmatically drawn. So those labels are just sitting on the essentially on the image, on the bitmap. And there we got sprite base tiles, and this is just well, apparently a tile set, but the tile set, tile swatches. Yeah, I think I'm not quite sure why I have here a tile set, because I didn't use the tile set. Because here for the environment, I think this I didn't show you. Those are all those individual parts from my sprite sheet that I drew by hand, that I extracted there in Photoshop and gave each a different name. So in the end, the final thing here, astronaut. Yeah, it's not really a good drawing of an astronaut, but for a mangled astronaut corpse, it might work. And this is Sprite 74. So I really did a lot of those little, yeah, like I said, lots and many of those little things here to have enough assets for the game. And this took, of course, a lot of time. So Frank also went, but Mr. Julius joined. Wonderful, thank you so much. And Red Hermit, Red Hermit posted a wall of text. You did an amazing job on the thank you on the animation. I animated the same spaceman sprite you created for the Discord animated. Oh right, yeah. And honestly, it was really hard. It looked at the tweet you did of the hand-drawn sequence to try and figure out the pattern. Yeah, like I said, I will reveal it in the post-mortem, but what I realized was when I did the tests, I couldn't do with any less than 17 frames, because otherwise it always looked choppy on one side, and when you draw something by hand with animations, you really try to want to avoid every frame counts that you can avoid. Yeah, just saves you time. And this is why anime sometimes, especially the cheap ones, are more like animated slideshows with people with wide mouths and those sweat drops going because that way you get like 5 seconds of running time out of it when you just have to draw one still, essentially. Mr. Julia says, I really want to stay longer, but I started a new big project and have to meet with my team. This is wonderful. No worries, since this is a VOD anyway. Have fun with your team and your big project and keep us posted. All right. Finally, I've danced around it for too long. Let's have a look at the code. And as always, with my progression is, since this is GameMaker, everything is room-based. So the first room that I start out with is, where are my rooms? Tile set sounds rooms is called Init. And then we got room end, room failed, room station, and room title. So you probably can guess what those stand for, but let's have first a look at room init. And in it, we only have one little instance, and this object is control init. So I have just, usually with GameMaker, to initialize everything, I have a room where nothing is in there. It just sets up the dimensions of the view and the room, which happens here. So viewports and cameras, I make sure that everything in this first room is set correctly, that I get here a viewport, and that it's, yeah, the properties and everything is like I would have, I would like to default to once the game starts. So, and this init object here essentially just initializes everything, and once it's done, it switches to the next room, and the next room is of course the room title. And there is nothing in this room. You can see here in the room editor, there's only a background, because the init object will create a game controller, a controller for input, and so on. So those are already present there, and then I'm just switching between which rooms we are. We've seen the station room. And finally, of course, the end room, again, is just a room where there's a background image there. I probably wouldn't have needed another room. I could have just displayed this one sprite on top of everything. But yeah, maybe I thought I wanted to add something to it, so it's good to have it as a separate room once you get there. But I never got there, because this is a game jam project. Okay, first let me say unicorn, so I can have a sip of water. This is our little drinking game. Whenever I say unicorn, we all should try to stay hydrated. And it feels good to be hydrated, because that way you can have more crackers. Okay, so let's get to the meat of everything, that are the objects. And my objects, Some of you already know that I prefix them with obj for object, and some things that I use as classes, not quite, but have all big letters, uppercase letters. And there is of course a class for interactables, which I call obj_I_ for interactable, just to keep myself sane, that I know that something I deem as interactable. Yeah, we got here object text box and pick up. Like I said, those big ones are like classes. They don't do anything by themselves. They usually just are factory presets in a set that once you create them, you need to specify what exactly kind of pickup you want to create, because by itself it doesn't do anything. Module ID we've seen before. But yeah, let's start here with control init. What happens in control init? The control init object just has one script attached when it's being created, and this just reads here is release build true. So yeah, we're releasing it. And since GameMaker has a weird sense of drawing directions, which is at least counterintuitive to everything that I'm used to. I usually start with creating an enumeration for directions. So east is 0, northeast is 45 degrees, northwest, so that I only use the cardinal directions. This is for player movement essentially, and never have to deal with thinking, okay, 270, is this now right, left, or down in GameMaker parlance? And look at this, it's down, it's south. So yeah, I'm aware that there are no cardinal directions in space, but in GameMaker now there are from me. Finally, I just noticed that Red Hermit said unicorn, cheers, in the chat, and the chat bot is not running. Let me amend this. Glitch.com, where do I have it? Bot.js, because of course glitch chatbots don't run all the time in the background. You have to activate them first, and usually I do this when the stream starts, but me being myself and having technical difficulties for some reason, now let's try this again. I will try unicorn in the chat, and it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? It says here it's running. Submit unicorn. The unicorn should reply something at least. Starting. To keep glitch fast for everyone, inactive projects get to sleep and wake up on request. I'm requesting this to wake up. I like that you're using an enum to set those up. Nice pro. Yeah, thank you. I don't think it's a pro tip. It's just for my own sanity to use this kind. I always like to use enumerations for things that don't change. I think you could also use macros in GameMaker, which is, I think, the intended way to do this, where you can just say macro something equals, it's like a constant, or I think this is how you do it. But I like to do this with enumerations because it's essentially for states. So it's just where the enum is just player state, and then player moving, player idle, player hit, or something. We will get to this probably in a bit. But yeah, I like my enumerations. And now, since recently, GameMaker finally can do structs, which is just amazing, because I always need to roll like multiple arrays at once to simulate structs. So it's nice now that I can just combine everything in a struct and pass the struct around instead of an index that is indexed in multiple arrays that should be kept in sync. Yeah, it's just weird stuff like this. I will try again now to hit unicorn in the chat, and now there we go. So unicorn, cheers everyone. Okay, so the next thing that I do, global, by the way, are global variables that, I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. So input, I create an input control. So this is another object that is control input and control game. Input, as one would assume, is concerned with handling all the player input, and game is concerned with all the game state, checking whether certain conditions are met, and so on and so forth, and generally just being the game master of this thing. Then we set volume for music and sound effects, and the color for highlighted text. I thought I would use more different colors, but then, yeah, it's always good, especially if you're trying to do color schemes and so on, to really not say something is blue, something is red, because something might change, but first find out how many different colors you need, or for what purpose you need different colors, and then just assign them a global variable, let's say color danger. And then you just use the danger color for everything that's dangerous in the environment, whenever a text says danger, or any buttons that are dangerous to push. So essentially you just have a semantic in a sense, and once you realize, oh, the color is not working, you can choose everything that should go together as a group. You can change it by just assigning one variable there differently. And of course we got some if release build room go to next. Otherwise, yes, commented out something, because sometimes especially when you do testing, you don't want to skip past the title screen every time. You really want to get to the portion that you're to the portion that you're testing. And this is what the create event does. So once the create event is finished, here the init event is finished initializing, it just goes to the next room, that is the title screen. So at this point we got the input control object and the game control object. So let's first have a look at the input control, because this is a lot easier. So in the input control, I'm just setting up what I deem is the key for up, left, right, down, and confirm, or a different confirm key. Maybe it's space, maybe it's enter. I realized that sometimes I want to use space, sometimes I want to use enter. So this is an alternative that I provide there. And the interact key is the E key. And those are just flags for is up, is down, is left, because those get set to true in the frame or in the step in the game where they are true, essentially. And how do I do this? Well, in the step event, I'm just checking if the quit key is being released, in this case the escape key, and if yes, then let's end the game and quit running through this event. If the key down for, in this case, the S key is the key is held, then is down is true and is up is false, otherwise is down is false, and so on and so forth. And therefore debugging, I also got a key for interacting and a key for confirming. If key confirm is check pressed or confirm alt is check pressed, yeah, the result is that is confirm is true. So essentially this is just decoupling the events in the game, or the control events, from the specific keys there. Because again, maybe you want your players to change their key layout at a certain point. It's much easier if you have this level of abstraction built in there like this. Okay, and the other thing is the game control, and this is, I think, one of the biggest objects that I have here. And again, we have here an enumeration, and in this case, like I said, it's the game state. I got init title once title. This once means the first time that this state is only run once and then switches to the default one. So for example, first we initialize the game and then it runs title once. This title once does something, and then just once we are on the title screen, loops through title. For example, this is helpful if you want to play music and you want to say, okay, when we switch to the title screen, let's play the music. But then you loop, of course, the game state is now title screen, and then you would start the music with each frame or each step. So this is not what you want. You want to start it the first time, and then you just want to check if the player is leaving the title screen. So this is why I have this once all the time here, wherever I need it. So if there is release builds, as you can see here, I got seconds to anomaly. This is a global variable because during testing, I really wanted to toy around with how long I give players, how much time I give them. And in the release build, you got 97 seconds. First, I got 47 seconds, Ludum Dare 47, Anomaly 47, but it was a bit tedious, to be frank. And this is why I just thought, yeah, 90, maybe 120, 2 minutes, well, this is maybe a bit too long. So this is why I just came up with 97. And as I said before, when I was playing the game, incidentally, this is exactly the same amount or how long it takes for you to run out of oxygen. A happy accident, I keep it. So okay, the first state, of course, is the init state. Then what is the room of the title, the room of the starting room, the room of failing? I'm just assigning here, essentially those are references to the rooms, and I'm assigning them to variables there. Currently we have no player, and do UI, yeah, we want to do the UI, and current music is -1, which means there is no music. The next thing is here, which module are we in? And yeah, we got here, again, it's an enumeration that I don't have to spell out or just try to find. Okay, module 3 is B1. No, I just say module dot A1, A2, B1, and so on and so forth, or none. And the current module that we start in is B1, because this is where we start in. So interaction, no one. Player will notify the game control on successful interaction. So this is because my way of documenting is everything that makes sense when you just look at the code. I don't document because it's pretty clear that, yeah, you're assigning values there. But why is interaction no one? What does this mean? And this is why I have this little just line to help me to understand even myself what is going on here. Or module string holds the module abbreviation. So this is A1, B1, and so on. So currently this is just, I need to initialize those variables that I have them later. Otherwise, GameMaker will complain, unless, of course, I'm using variables in a very tight scope. UI rotation and the rotation offset is like I've shown you, is this little, oh, let me run the game and then I can show you in the game. It's the icon on top, this little graphic, this little thumbnail in which module you are. And I'm not drawing a new picture for each module. I'm just rotating this hexagon around. So need to zoom out here a bit. Yeah, and it's this thing here. And when you move between modules, all it does is it rotates this thing here by 22.5 degrees. Okay, so this is this rotation offset there. Player start X and Y. This is where we start the player as, where we start the player at, not as. Then it's the player holding anything, no, currently, and the holding string is currently in hands is, of course, the string that's being displayed in the UI. Then we got a bunch of flags that are for this game. So each time you do something that the game state should progress in one way or another, it's going to set a flag, and this is what's happening here. Flag suit examined is false, true if the player examines the suit, and so on and so forth. Flag intro monologue done, flag player holding rollover is true when the player is holding something when the loop resets. So this is, it's rolling over the loop and so on. So these reset every loop, and those shouldn't reset every loop, because the intro monologue, the first time you have the intro monologue in the game, the game shouldn't always think that it's the first time you see it. And for other things like the life support unit and the memory being read and so on and so forth, those are things that should reset, of course, with each loop. And anomaly counter active, anomaly counter init, and you can see here again I'm using seconds to anomaly times room speed. This is just the amount in ticks in frames. About how much time you have. Like I said, since I tweaked this value, also we will see in the text later on, I will convert this value to the string, because I don't want to hunt down each instance that I say you only have so and so many seconds to beat the game, because then I tweak this value and then forget to change it in all occurrences. And yeah, so this is, I thought I use a variable, this is a computer, it can do things for me. Yeah, the anomaly counter, essentially I'm just counting down by 1 with each step, and 1 this hits 0, there we go. And of course I'm counting how many loops the player has seen for bookkeeping internally. And the reset countdown init is 1.4. This is used for this flash and then the fade to blue when this thing happens. Yeah, and then of course it sets the reset countdown again to it's resetting. And do anomaly reset is false. At this time it's false. And randomize is very important, because you have to tell GameMaker to randomize the seed each time the game is run. Otherwise it will use a random seed, I think, just a 1 or 0 or a preset seed. Anyway, this is usually a problem when you start out with GameMaker and make a game where the enemies just appear random, and then you will realize each time it's exactly the same pattern. This is why you have to do randomize. And let's give the personnel random names, and those are all my beautiful, wonderful, amazing patrons. that I got there as names, and then we shuffle this list, and then for persons A, B, C, and D, we just pick a random name here. The first name in the list, the second name, the third, and the fourth. So just whatever happens after shuffling this list to be the first 4 names, those are going to be our protagonists of this game. And there's currently no text box active, and let's do init. Do init equals true. This is something that is also a staple of how I roll things. That is in the step event, pretty much all my objects have here this do init. So the first time they are run, they do init, they initialize some values. I've mentioned this in previous code reviews, but just to be safe, I want to mention this again, why this is happening. Because I mean, you could do this here in the create event, for example. But the reason for this is if you want to create something programmatically, it works like this. For example, you say instance create depth. Does this work? Yeah, instance create depth. It's something like this. And then you create something like, in this case, an object fx. And once you create something, it gets initialized with all those values here. But for example, sometimes maybe for this effect, you want a different type of effect. And this is what happens here. Now I have here this handle to this instance that gets created in this line here with all its variables that are set here. And now I'm overriding only a certain set of variables, in this case the type and the fade duration. And this is how I can do this, to essentially inject code after something was being created and before it runs, or with the first time in the step event it runs. This is all that there is to do init. Also, sometimes it's very nice or very handy when you need to reset something, you just say do init equals true, and it resets to the first time there, to those first time values. In this case, what happens here in the game, when it's first setting email. When it's first got this do init, the first thing it does, it creates this object effects. And this object effects is just like the name implies, an effect. In this case, it just draws a solid over the entire screen. And if again, I'm using enumerations in the effects, and if it's fade in, then yeah, it just starts with a black solid that has alpha 1. And then it subtracts alpha for a certain duration until it's completely transparent, and this is how I do a fade in or a fade out. It's a bit wasteful to draw a rectangle over the entire screen and not do this maybe via shaders or something, but computers are fast enough nowadays. At least I don't have to worry about this, especially not in a game jam. And once we are done with initializing, well, we don't want to do the UI in case we're doing the UI, and of course we don't want this init to run each time again. And again, if there is the release build and the layer colliders exists, we want to switch it off, that it's not visible. Let me show you again here in the room of the station, because it's not just this layer colliders, it's like 4 layers that I don't want to be shown in the final game. It's all those layers here with those pink boxes there, because those are just for me so that I know what's going on there. And this is why this layer colliders here, when I was just having one layer with colliders, just to make sure that it's in the final release that it's always switched off. So do init. Like I said, this is just the first time this runs, it fades in. And there, if we are on the title room, yeah, here I still have a remnant of a code where I'm just checking if the current room is of room title. But then I realized, since this might be better if I do a state machine. And this is what happens here. So essentially we can just delete this. So here we got a huge state machine. So if the game state is init, then yeah, we're pretty much done with initialization at this point anyway, but I have here just some empty brackets, and then we switch the state to game state title once. So next frame this runs, we are at game state title once. So if the room is not the title room, well then let's go to the title room and not do anything else. So, but when we are sure that we are in the current title room, then we create a new effect. Again, it's a fade in effect essentially, and its duration is room speed. This means it's 60 ticks. It's 1 second. So we're fade in for 1 second, and there is music. So we set the current sound gain. Well, it's fade out whatever music is currently playing. Set the current music to the title music, and set the sound gain, the volume of the music volume, the global music volume, and then say, okay, we're done with title once. Let's go to the title the next time we're in with the next frame essentially. And here we are in the next frame. All we do, we loop over this, and only if the global input flag is confirm equals true, this is when we press enter, then we switch the state to game start. Before we go to game start, let's have a look at other states. Fail once. When we fail, first thing is we switch off the UI, we don't need it. Then we create an effect, and this is fade in of color RGB. What is this? Red. So essentially we're fading to red and fading out the current music, playing the music fail and setting the music fail volume, and then we go to fail and also set the state to fail. So the room fail is just this thing where it's this one sprite that says you failed, maybe you should try again. And all we do is once we're in this room, we just wait for the player to hit enter or confirm whatever we deem to be confirm, and then we boot the player back to the title screen. And this is how I do it. Same thing for the success. We also don't do the UI, but we fade into white and then fade out once we are in the success thing there. And the music, again, we stop the current music, play the win music, and go to the ending room. And when we're in the ending room and hit any key or the confirm key, then the game ends. And this is pretty much everything that's outside of the main game loop. So now we are in the main game loop, and we say we're on the title screen, we hit confirm, and now it says we are in the state game start. Okay, so first thing we go is to the start room then. First, then we create a new effect, and this effect is fade in, room speed times 2 over 2 hours. So we're fading in by for not 2 hours. Did I say 2 hours? 2 seconds. What was I thinking? Whatever music is currently playing, we fade it out. We set the music to the in-game music, and true means here it's just looping, and set its volume to whatever the current music volume is. Then the anomaly counter, we set to the anomaly counter init value. This is what we've seen before. This is 97 seconds times the room speed. So each frame, we just, as we will see in the next in-game state, then we just deduct 1, we decrement this value 1, and if the anomaly counter is equal to 0 or less than 0, well, then the counter ran out. And this is how I do counters. And the next state, of course, is in-game once. So we start the game here. We say the counter is, you know what, I just realized that is missing here. We also should set, once we start a new game and not just a new loop, we should also set the anomaly loops to 0 again. So let me just copy this over and game start here. So not just the counter to 0, but also the number of loops that we've had experienced before. Okay, so we are in game once. So the first time that we are in game, the thing is, if the in-game music is not playing, well, then make sure that the in-game music is playing now, and let's do the user interface. And first we store the player's initial position. I'm not quite sure why we want to do this, but I thought when I move the player around, or no, of course it makes sense, because, excuse me, I'm full of air today, because when the player moved around, of course, and then we want to set it to the starting location where I placed the player the first time in the room editor. So this is where we're going to store the player's X and Y coordinates. Okay, to do, move what the player is holding to the player's inventory. I think I did this. So if the player is not holding nothing, or if the player is not holding nothing, they're holding something, then we say player holding, player dot holding, is what they are holding. And essentially, we're not going to display the sprite when the player walks across maybe this domino key. All we do is we say now, we put a reference into the player and say, yeah, they're holding this instance, but the instance itself is, we put it to X and Y 0, and then we hide it. So essentially it's still in the room, it's still there, it's just outside of the view and also hidden, but yeah, it's not removed or anything. The player just has a reference in their inventory essentially to it. So now we switch how many anomaly loops we've seen so far. So the first, of course, is 0. So if flag intro monologue is done, so this means we haven't seen the intro monologue, then we just have here, this is a script text box we will look at in a bit. Essentially we just create a text box, and this is what the text box should read. This is the headline of the text box, this is the content of the text box. So the first time the anomaly runs, we say what happened, all I remember is this and that, better do something about that. So this is really just one line. So the next time the anomaly loops and the player is not holding anything, then, or is not holding nothing, there we go, again, is double negatives. So the anomaly loops and the player is holding onto something, then of course the item that the player is holding is what the player is holding, the name, because we will need this here. So again, we create a text box and it says, where am I? Everything is just as it was, but I'm still as it was seconds to anomaly ago. Again, because if I could also just spell it as it was 97 seconds ago, but again, if I change the value of during game testing, I probably forget to change it here, and this is why I take the value there from the global variable seconds ago, even my pressure suit and so on, but I'm still holding item. So this is why we need to just get here player holding.name to get the item name there. But if it loops and we aren't holding anything, it just has the same dialogue, but in the end it's just not saying that I'm still holding something. Of course you could make this shorter, but I thought I have a completely different line there, maybe in the dialogue, I don't know, but in the end it doesn't cost as much. And now when we loop over twice, we say stuck in a loop, I gotta find to get out of this, and with 3 times, here we go again, this is giving me a headache, and then the player is saying nothing. So, but I really wanted to make sure that each time, at least the first couple of 3-4 couple of times that you see this, player is saying something differently. So if we are still here in switch anomaly loops, we're done with this one. Okay, so we're here still in this first time in-game once state. So if not player holding rollover flag and player is not holding nothing, so then we say another time the loop is complete, but I am still holding, yeah, just to really spell it out to the player each time that the player is still holding something, and there is the flag player holding rollover is going to be set. Again, we are here in the game object because this game object is persistent, which means that once I set a flag here, it will roll over even if the loop completes. Apart from other things like here, player flag life support unit ready is false. So those kind of flags, those get reset each time the loops resets, but other flags like player holding rollover is just once per game and not per loop. Okay, once we're done with this, we switch to the game state in game, and this just keeps looping over when we are in game. So the holding string is nothing, but if the player exists, then we check the current module in which the player is in, module A1, module C2 or something. We just query the player and say, hey player, which module are you on? And we're not even this, we're just looking directly into the player object, to the player instance, and pick the variable from there. You wouldn't do this probably in object-oriented programming languages. You just would have a method on the player object that returns the current module they're in. But yeah, for GameMaker, I just pick the variable straight out of this. So if the player, of course, is not alive, so first we check if the player exists, and if the player is not alive, well, we switch to fail once. But if the player is not holding nothing and the instance exists of what the player is holding, then we say, yeah, the player is still holding something, and the holding string is we get the name of the thing that they are holding. Pretty straightforward. And here we got to do only do once, flag a live support unit fixed. So this is if the player has fixed the live support unit, then we just say oxy fixed is true in the player, because when oxy fixed equals true, then we don't have this running down bar in the player that just ticks down how much oxygen they have, because it's fixed now and they don't need to worry about it. And here, to change the game depending on player interactions, it doesn't do anything. So this is clearly a stub. And here, to set the modules for the UI. So we just switch which current module. Again, we just ask the player, hey, what module are you in? And this returns the enum. And the enum, if the enum is A1, then we just say the module string is A1 and the location string is crew quarters, and this is how far we rotate this icon there of the station. This is what happens in this switch statement. And there we got the anomaly counter. So again, this is looping, it's happening once every frame. We are decrementing the anomaly counter, and if it is less or smaller than 0, first let's reset the counter, and then we create this this flash there, so it's a fade flash type effect. Got another email. My god, I'm so popular today. And the fade duration is anomaly reset countdown init times, let me zoom out here again, times 2. I don't know why I came up with this. And of course we want to play the sound for the anomaly and set the sound of it at the volume of the sound effects. So, and if minus reset countdown is less than 0, because first the anomaly counts down until it is 0, but once it is 0, then of course we have this flash and this fade in and fade out. And for this I have an additional counter, and this is the anomaly reset countdown, and this is as we had here, this is just 2 seconds long. So it's this, yeah, beautiful what I did here. It doesn't tell you a lot, but like I said, it's first the countdown runs out and then there's next countdown, just so this fade effect can happen there. And finally we got this beautiful text box. So if text box does not exist, well, then there's no text box active. But if we have a text box in existence, again, this we're checking this every frame if there is a instance of text box, and if there is, and if the player exists, because usually they should exist, so this is an assertion, so then the player state is halted. So we just halt the player essentially, and anomaly counter active false. This is what I've showed you before. Once we interact with something and there is a text box, the player can't move, but we also don't count down the anomaly countdown. So, but if the player has text confirm and the text box also says it is finished, we will see what this means in a bit. Then we just say current text box active equals no one, so there is no text box, and we switch on the anomaly counter again. And if the player exists and the player is halted, which of course they are, then we say, okay, now we allow player input again, we allow player movement again. This is different, movement and input, and we switch the player state to idle once again. So first their state was halted, so whatever they were doing, I just stopped them in their tracks and didn't accept any input on them while the text box was being displayed. So once we close the text box, the player can move again essentially. And here we reset the anomaly. So if do anomaly reset equals true, and by the way, this happens here once the countdown has finished, then we set the counter to true, that it's active again. We reset the counter, of course, and we also reset the reset counter, like I said, this 2 seconds after the countdown has run out, so that the effects can ramp up. Then we restart the loop, but we add 1 to the amount of loops, and set the state again to in-game once that everything gets reset. And also we reset the player there. And this is what the game control is concerned with. So you can see it's pretty simple. It's just bookkeeping, what has the player seen and where they are, and updating the UI. Let's have a quick look at the UI. So if a do UI, again, this is just if do UI is false, nothing will happen here. So this first we just draw the sprite of the sidebar, and now I got here to be able to align the text properly. I just poked in some hard variables here. So the baseline X and the max width of the sidebar is just set here. So first for the countdown timer, let me just show you so that you have an image, because otherwise it would be if you don't know or you don't see it side by side what's happening there. Let me just make here a quick screenshot. Oh no, not save direct. Yeah, of course, save directly works also. Let's open this up here in our viewer there. Oh yeah, maybe make this not full screen then. And maybe close this, otherwise there would be music playing in the background. Okay, so there we go. So first thing is the sidebar, that is this gray blob here, can be anything. Next is the baseline X, is how far from the screen left where we want to start drawing our text, and at this position, which is 1540 pixels from the left, and the max width of the text is 340 pixels. So first the countdown timer, which is this big number here. We just say color white, font align top, align on the left, set the font to countdown, and then we just draw the maximum of the ceiling of the anomaly counter. Why not don't we round this? Of course, then it wouldn't go to 0. So we always want to seal it. Just use the ceiling or the maximum, either that or wait. Right now I'm not quite sure. Why is there maximum 50 or the ceiling of anomaly counter times 60 divided by 0? I'm not quite sure, but I think this has just to do that it's not. It essentially is transforming the values of the anomaly counter to seconds, and then not rounds it down. Well, it's not a rounding, it's just a ceiling to the nearest integer and just displays that. But I'm not quite sure why I'm using here maximum. Oh, of course, there is a maximum. It's here with 0. And this maximum means just, when the anomaly counter is still counting below 0, that it doesn't show up as a -1, which usually just is something that I think many of us have had before when we were making our games. When the player is hit, you deduct from their HP and also show it in the UI. But the player is hit once too often and they are dead, and now their HP are in the negatives and not just 0. And this is why I maximize this value here with whatever, how many seconds are left, or 0, whichever is the bigger value. So holding, here it just says Tim's keycard, so this is just what's currently in hands. Also setting just the font and where to draw the text, and this is the holding string that was set before here in the step event. So whatever the player is holding, we just take the name from this item and display it here. In hands, I think this is the same thing here as holding, because this doesn't make a lot of sense. Holding string. So I think it just says here in hands, but I'm not quite sure. Oh, of course, it says holding or in hands. And I didn't draw anything. One of those things gets drawn here programmatically and the other is drawn on the sprite. But here I think both are for doing both essentially. So the UI rotation, that is this thing here. Finally, the module code is which location are we in? And the location string is this here, backlap and pressure chamber. So this is why I always have here those hints here, those notes that I know myself where something happens. And here I got even debug flags. This is what I use for debugging, and then realized, there's still something that's not being shown here. And O2 saturation, 2% life support unit, and so on. Essentially, I used this as I obfuscated my debugging values here. So if you switch on the life support unit, it says here 1 because it's true. So everything else is here just hard-coded and says operational and so on. But the second to last thing here is just it converts this boolean there to a string, and booleans are either 1 or 0. in GameMaker, and this is what happens here. So this is, yeah, just the UI drawing. And it only gets drawn when I say, yeah, draw the UI now. Cool. Unicorn, everyone. Mr. Julius, by the way, has asked in the chat like half an hour ago, or 10 minutes, I'm sorry, whether the Discord is still just for subs or Patreons. And currently it's still for Patreons, but like I said, I want to change this probably with the release or shortly before the release of the Ludum Dare 46 documentary once it's out. But it's coming, yes, and I don't know quite when. I don't have an exact date. And yeah, thank you, Red Hermit, thank you. Okay, so this was the game control, and I've closed this sidebar here. And the other thing is that's interesting is here we've looked at the game, of Init, at input. And let's first look at the object player, because this is the other thing that's the most interesting. So we got here 4 different kinds of events: the create event, the step event, the draw event, and the draw GUI event. So what's different between draw and draw GUI is that draw GUI only draws in the screen space wherever it may be. If you recall, this is a huge room and the player is moving around, but when you want to display something, you always want to display it on top of everything inside the screen space, like the UI, for example. Okay, so when we create the player also has different states: active, idle, walking, halted, interacting, dead, or one. I don't think I'm using the one. Yeah, again, I'm just assigning sprites to the player, what their state is, of course, and which sprite. Then different, again, I'm just saying, yeah, what is the walk sprite, what is the idle sprite. That should I change the sprites, I only have to do it, also change it here in the create event. It's just another layer of abstraction. Again, which object, which instance we are holding. We'll start out with no one, and the interactable that we currently could interact with or not. This is when we get close to something that we can pick up, like the domino key, that the domino key knows we are in proximity and gets displayed yellow or gets tinted yellow. And this is the potential interactable that's also holding a reference to an instance. And float text is nothing. So if the release build is, then we got initial oxygen of 15 of 100. So it's 15% oxygen. This is when I start to play in the release. When I was testing it, I don't want it to each time have to go to the first pressure suit to load up on my oxygen. So when I was testing it, I was giving myself 100 oxygen. So the oxygen is the initial amount of oxygen. Does the oxygen leak initially? Yes. Do we show the oxy bar, this oxygen bar there? Yes. And is oxy fixed? Well, it hasn't been fixed, so it's false when we start. And here the oxy drain is per step 0.02. Again, this is just a joke that I said oxygen is destroying at 0.02. But in the end, with 94 seconds, magically it happened that you would run out of oxygen exactly the same time the game would loop. This is funny. And this is just what's necessary here to create the first assignments. And then we do how many HP does the player have? 100. Yes, the player has health points. You never see them because once they run out of oxygen, their health points drain pretty fast at an increased rate, but I think you just get half or 2 seconds. It's just internally that the player has health points. Yeah, then it's just for movement. There's walking speed, acceleration, their friction, how fast they can move at maximum, what starting direction they have. Are they walking? Are they alive? Do we allow input? Do we allow injuries? It's just those flags there. And those get written externally. And by the way, I'm not using a grace counter, grace period, or the alpha for the grace period, because in this game you don't get injured or you don't get hit, so there is no need to hit the player or this is what everything means here with that's happening. Do hit and the hit force, horizontal and vertical. Again, this is from the previous Ludum Dare game Rampage, where the ram could hit you and it would bounce you back, and those values are still in there. I never bothered to remove them. So Just what's important is that we write a global variable that with global scope we get the ID of the player. So whenever something needs to get the handle of the player, all they need to look at is the global game player ID, and from there they just need to check if the player is alive or if that's still valid. But apart from that, you don't have to find the instance of the player or anything, do something that's computationally intense like that. You just look at the global variable and then check if this thing still exists, and this is how to get the player, because you need, of course, often and many times references to the player. So the current module that the player is on is module none, because it gets written when colliding with a certain module. Let me switch back here to the station, because module zones. So if the player is inside this module, they will collide all the time with this big orange box there, and from this collision we will get which module we are in, essentially. And if we aren't colliding with any, then the module is none. Again, this is here the external force and the external friction when we get hit from something externally, which we don't. Interact counter init is how long we can interact with something. The controller, again, this means here that it's only referenced once here, and I'm not using the input controller, and at least in this game. And of course, here's are we allowing input? Are we allowing movement? The current walking speed is 0, and current input is none. Again, this gets set, I think, in init. Yeah, the player color, the current color, and so on, and the last valid X and last valid Y. I think this was when I toyed around with collisions. It's not being used here. And finally, do init equals true. So what happens each step now with the player? So if we hit to do init, yeah, the input is the global input. Of course, the player needs to have a reference to the input where to query if there is a button pressed. This is why I'm just assigning this one here. New X and new Y. So each step I'm having here a potential new X and a potential new Y that's derived from the current X and the current Y. This is because collisions. When we're standing there, we say, okay, before checking whether the player is pressing in any direction or anything, let's just store those values, but we still have the original X and the original Y that we always come back to should we need to. Okay, so this is, again, we're switching the state of the player, but independent of state, there's also happening something. But I just want to make sure that you know that now we're looking at only at the states here, and everything that comes after it is not is happening each time independent of state. I'll just make this here independent of state. So now we're switching the state. So if the player is active once, well, we switch to player active because there's nothing special that's happening the first time the player becomes active. So when the player is active, all we do is we say, yep, we allow input. But do we allow movement? That's a different story. So if the player is the first time set to walking, the first time the thing we do is we set the sprite to the walking sprite, and we say do leak oxygen equals true. So the first time the player walks, essentially the oxygen starts to leak. And when we're walking, nothing special is happening here. I commented out the sprite equals sprite walk. Usually, yeah, I mean, you can do this to check that with each frame, is this still the correct sprite being displayed? But in this case, it always was. So the first time the player idles, while we set their sprite to idle, and also do leak oxy. This is because first we start the game and set the player to active. Active just means we allow the input. And now, then we have to check, are they walking or are they idle? Either way, they need to leak oxygen. I don't quite sure that this is the best way to do this, but apparently I was just toying around, and yeah, now I set this twice. So, but just apart from this first leaking oxygen, if the player is idling, then just do nothing. So the player, if the player is halted, then we play the interact sprite, because when is the player being halted? When a text box pops up, and a text box pops up when you interact with something. So this is not how you should be doing things. Usually you should, is the player interacting and then freeze on the interacting animation. No, I just say, whenever they are halted, it's probably because of an interaction that's being happening. So let's just have the player with their arm extended, and this is the state now is idle, but we don't allow input and we don't allow to leak the oxygen. Like I said, when we halt the player, we also don't drain their oxygen. When the first thing the player is dead, well, we pop a debug message that just reads dead once, so that I know that this is happening. Is alive is false, and when we are dead, we don't leak oxygen anymore. This would be nasty to kill you twice. But we don't allow input, otherwise we all have seen this, right? To move that players, when they are dead, they can still move their corpse sprite around, so of course we don't allow input and we don't allow movement. And now the state is dead. And again, we don't allow input. And now when the player is dead, the rest to restart or anything is happened by the game control. When the player won, we don't allow input and we also don't leak any oxygen. And also it's cool, as soon as the player has won, I make sure that they can't be injured anymore, because nothing is more frustrating when you play a jam game and you manage to beat it somehow. You were just lucky with 1 health point left, and technically you have won, but still something hits you and you die, and your dead state overrides the you won state. And usually this is what I really detest, and this is why I make sure that once like I said, in this game you can't take damage, but usually as soon as a player has won, they can't be injured anymore, they can't die or anything. Otherwise this would make the game put it at a weird state where the player has won at the same time they're dead or something. Okay, so independent of state, when we allow input and the input is left or is right or is down or is up, so essentially we're just moving, then the walking speed equals the walking speed plus the acceleration. So each frame we're just accelerating the player unless their walking speed is bigger or equal than the maximum walking speed. And when we're not moving, then we just minus walking speed friction, we just decelerating the player by this friction there. It's just that when you hit up, that the player is not going from 1 to 100 in 1 frame, but there's just this little bit of momentum and friction in there. And Sean Spalding's collisions code. This is from Sean Spalding. Shout out to Sean, who's doing a lot and many great GameMaker tutorials. Check out his channel. As always, it's really something. It's not too bad if you nick someone else's code if they've managed to do something that you want to do. It's not the best code and it's not always working in my cases, but I just used those bits that were working from my case. And as always, collisions and so on, always a big problem with me. Red Hermit says, I made the mistake on my first LEJ game, could die after getting past the finish line with my farting critter in a balloon. Glad you accepted. You accounted for that. All those things that I've learned the hard way, and this is, again, give players a grace period that they can be injured multiple times a frame or something, and always make sure that once the player has won, it's okay. Even if they get hit again, they have won. Okay, so if we allow the input and we allow the movement, then we create a new local variable that is movement speed, and we set it to 0. Okay, now we set it to the walking speed if we allow input and we allow movement. So if the input is left, then the H speed, the horizontal speed, is minus movement speed. Otherwise, it is plus movement speed, and the vertical speed for up and down the same. For diagonal, we just multiply this by 2/3. Otherwise, I think we all had this bit of code that players would move twice the speed when they would move diagonal, because they would move up and left, for example, at the same speed, so it would be too fast. And this is my hack. I just multiplied by 2/3 the vertical and the horizontal speed, and it works. Now here we are at collisions. So if new x, again, this new x is just a copy of the x the player was in, of the x coordinate the player was in before we did anything with walking and so on. So now it's just our candidate, right? We try to add the h speed Again, this is just there from the movement speed if we're holding left. And we just see, okay, is there a place meeting? Is the player colliding or overlapping with an object of the type object collider? And if so, well, then we don't push the player in this direction. We just say the H speed, the horizontal speed is 0, that they don't even get into a position where they could be colliding with something. The same thing for vertical. And also there for diagonal, because you also don't want for players to be stuck by 1 pixel and then never get out. And even with my collision code, this is the collision code. You can see you can clearly get stuck easily. So now that we make sure that we've accounted for all the edge cases. So as soon as there could be a potential problem, we set H speed or V speed to 0. So and if there aren't any problems or potential problems, then we could add this speed to X and Y, to this proposed value, to new X and new Y. But we're not done yet, because if the speed is not 0 or the V speed is not 0, well, then the player is walking, and we switch their state to walking with the next frame. And this is pretty much it. So now we're checking for collisions with other things that aren't colliders, but for things that are of the type interactable. So first, the interactable is none, because I need to reset this each time. So if there is no place meeting, then it is none. No one in this case. But if we have a place meeting of our current coordinates with anything that's interactable, then the interactable, because again, first we're checking if there is any collision. This is this place meeting here. And the instance place, as you can see here from the syntax, it looks similar, but the difference is place meeting just returns true or false. We just say, excuse me, are we colliding with anything of type interactable? And instance place returns the instance ID. Of course, first we want to check if are we colliding with anything right now, and if not, we don't bother trying to figure out the individual IDs. But if we are colliding with any interactable, yeah, well, now we look closer and want to get which one exactly we're colliding with. And now at this point, we can be sure that we're colliding with something. So the float text, that is the text on top of the player when they are in a potential situation where they could be interacting with something, we get the name of the thing they could interact with on top of them. This is the float text, and the interactable in focus equals true. So if the interactable is in focus, again, is determined by how close we are to this interactable. And this happens by the collision box of this interactable. We will get to this in a bit, but essentially this is just what's happening here. We're not there is no collision with any interactable, and if there is, we just take its name and say, yeah, this one is in focus, or there is one that's in focus, and if not, just clear the string. Zones, yeah, if they're again, those are just for the modules. If you're colliding with a module ID, then we want to get the current module ID. Otherwise, we are in no module. And here, damage. Okay, in this case, if not oxy fixed, if we haven't fixed our oxygen tank, and if we leak oxygen, well, then oxygen equals oxygen minus the oxygen drain. This happens again each frame. And if the oxygen is less than or equal to 0, then we decrement the health points by 1. So essentially, since this game is running at 60 FPS, it means you lose 60 health points in 1 second. So in 1.5 seconds almost, you die when you start out with 100 HP. Or else, the oxygen leak was fixed. We don't even show the oxygen bar in the UI because it's not draining or anything, it's not leaking. We don't need to show this. And of course, if the health points drop below 0, well, the player is dead. And if we allow input, and first we check if there are any interactions. So if we're not moving, but we're trying to interact with something, and there is no interactable, that is none. So essentially, we are not interacting with no one. So there is something. So first, the interactable should also exist as well. So if it's no point trying to find an instance, because first we try to get the instance ID, And then we check, okay, is this instance ID, does something exists with this ID? So this only runs in that case. And if it is so, then we say do interact true. And this is more or less a method, if you want to, in object-oriented parlance. This is a method, well, in practice it's a Boolean, inside this interactable. This has nothing to do with the player. The player just says, I want to interact with you, and whatever you are, you figure out what this interaction looks like. And if the object is an ancestor of interactable type item, pick up item, there is nothing happening there. So yeah, apparently not that much implemented. Okay, now for the display of the how the player sprite is being displayed. The alpha is the initial alpha, that is 1. I'm not using a different alpha here. In the previous game I used 50% transparency when you are invulnerable for a second or two, and this is why I have here this alpha check. So if we allow injuries and we are being hit, well, then we get this external force and so on, which is not going to happen in this game. So this is why I gloss over it. Everything that's happening here has been explained in detail in the code review of what's it called, Rampage. So this is all for this force. And finally, once everything is done with this external force and collisions and so on and so forth, at this point we're quite certain that the new x and new y coordinates are valid, and then we just round it to the nearest pixel, and this is what x and y become for the next frame. And here again, if we are walking and the vertical speed is less than 0 and the horizontal speed is equal to 0, the current direction is north, otherwise the current direction is northeast, northwest, and so on and so forth. And here the image angle, this is just in which direction we turn this player sprite depending on which direction they're currently walking or facing in. And if the player is alive and is walking, we change the sprite. It doesn't happen here, as we've seen it happens before. But if the player is alive and is the player interacting, then the sprite is the interact sprite. We don't allow movement, and this interact counter, or is minus interact counter is less or equal to 0, then interact equals false and allow movement is true. This interact counter is just something I'm not quite sure I have implemented, is how long you need to extend your hand or how long you need to push the button until an interaction happens, or after you've pushed the button, for how long this interaction is valid in a sense. I don't think I've used it in this code, and this is essentially it. And the last thing is here, depth equals -y. This is for something where you have this rather oblique isometric perspective, where the lower on the bottom of the screen your sprite is, the closer to the camera it is. So essentially that tufts of grass or any objects behind it pop behind it, and this is this trick to say the depth is -y. There was something happening on the chat I saw out of the corner of my eye, and it was Renko++ says Odysseus is not interactable according to 9 out of 10 Cyclops. I have no idea what this means, but a Greek mythology nerd joke. I give you a thumbs up and a sip of water. Odysseus is not interactable according to 9 out of 10 Cyclops. I should get this, but I don't. Okay, to finish off the player with the draw event, yeah, we draw the player sprite, the image index, that is the image in the animation, which animation frame we're at X and Y. We use it at the image scale that we set in the editor. By the way, all those green things are built-in variables there, so I'm not running my own. So image index gets automatically assigned with GameMaker. I just, same as with X and Y, I can assign it manually, but if I don't, then with each new frame, then the image index advances by 1 and I don't have to roll it myself. Same thing is here for X scale and Y scale. This is just how big I scaled the sprite in the editor. And the image angle we've seen is just in which direction I go. And the color and the alpha, and yeah, it's just draw yourself at these coordinates. And finally, the GUI, nobody says GUI, the GUI, what happens here? Well, first, we need to transform the X and Y coordinates of the player to the current screen space, essentially, because as you've seen before, here in this big station here, this this thing here is the entire HD screen. So when we are here, it's like coordinates 16,000 by 8,000, and we are just converting this back to the screen space where we are inside this view. So if floating text equals is not empty, we've seen this when we are in the vicinity of anything that we can interact with, this string will be set. So I'm just checking if this string is empty, and if it's not, well, then we probably should display it somewhere. And then we just get the text width and see how big this text gets and set the font size, and then we just draw it at a certain point. Again, this is here just black for shadows, and I will show you in the game how this looks like, but essentially it's just styling text and drawing it at a very specific point on the screen. And the oxy bar is this health bar for oxygen, is the same thing, and it also draws here the text that reads oxygen, and below that it draws. It says draw health bar. In GameMaker, this is those bars that you can draw. You use the command draw health bar, and from where to where, and again XX, YY is the local X and the local Y of the player origin. Let me just quickly show you what this is. Zoom out, full screen, there we go. So when I'm here, this nodes thing here, when I'm getting closer to something that I can interact with, that is this floating text there on top. When I interact with it, then it opens up this text box here, and this text box this is the next thing we're going to look at. The text box here has a title and a content, and then here hit space or enter to close, which is the same for everything. So, and this huge orange fringe there was, well, those module things here that I didn't hide. Because if you hide something, it is still there, you just don't see it, and this is what you want in the compiled game. So this was for the player. Now let's have a look at those overarching, that I like to call class objects. So this one here is called Object Collider, and it has no events. How is this possible? I used it everywhere, but it doesn't do anything. The thing is, it got some children. The children are blocker, doors, and player. And the player checks, if you recall, for if it's colliding with an object of type collider. And even if you collide with something that's a child of a class, it's derived from this class, it would still trigger, yes, this is of type collider. So this is why I have pretty much just one class collider, and everything you could collide with derives from this class, and it doesn't really derive from it. It is a child of this class in GameMaker lingo. But I don't need I only need to check if there is a collision with collider. I don't need to check if there is a collision with door, if there is a collision with bullet 1, and so on. Just collider, and it pretty much handles all the other things that are parented to collider. The same thing here is for interactable and module ID. Again, module ID has its parent is zone, so I usually could check if I'm in a certain zone, and here it just says module equals module none. So how do I get from this one here the correct module name or module number? The thing is here, you can set creation codes to an instance. Let's make sure we are here on the module zones, and those are all module objects of type module object. And when I double click on it, I need to zoom in here, there it has this creation code, and this is something that is easily overlooked. And usually you wouldn't look for code in the room editor, but in GameMaker you could put code there, and I try to avoid it whenever I can, but most of the times I can't, especially during game jams. And this is why it's always important that I tell you, for me, yes, please look at my creation code. Because here for this thing, the creation code just says module, and then we have this enum module C2. And the other module here on top, when I double click it, will have, I need to zoom out to get this. Where is it? To get to this little overlay, that I can get its creation code. Oh, of course, there it is. GameMaker. And this one here also has a creation code, but this one is module D1 and so on. And this is also the reason here why pretty much anything that's that should be rotating here, like the debris here in front. Let me show it to you again in the game how this looks like, those, because clearly you remember that there aren't any corpses there, but let me go here. And now those have turned into those little rocks, this little debris bricks here. And the thing is, again, this is happening in the creation code. Let me switch to, God, on what layer they are in. Are they on instances? Yes. So again, I just double click and look at the creation code and says here Sprite, and I just assign it the debris sprite. But the object itself, it's just called object rotator, or rotator, and it has by default this Astronaut, there we go, Astronaut sprite, and this is why it's going to be displayed here. Sometimes this is what I really like about Unity, is that you could script the editor much more than you can do it in GameMaker, and sometimes this is really problematic when you want to expose certain values that you can tweak in the editor in GameMaker. Essentially, sometimes it would be faster to create your own level editor for GameMaker that writes out like JSON files or something, but displays correctly. And this is the only thing that is here, is the module name, because when the player is colliding with this module ID, all it does is, which module, or am I colliding with the module ID? Yes, then put the name, or get the enum value, and then just switch on the enum value and get the right name out of this. This is all that happens here. Then, of course, we got the examinable and interactable and the effects. Well, let's have a look first at the interactable. And the interactable, also the parent is a zone. Again, I can check if I'm colliding with a zone or if I'm colliding with an interactable. And the child of this interactable is an examinable. And the examinable, my God, why did I call it like this? Are all the interactable is pretty abstract, examinable is pretty abstract, and then those are the actual implementations of the locker, the life support, the generator. And even items are both interactable and examinable and are of type item. So you can see here there is a three levels deep nesting going on an item. So I can check for an item. An item is both an interactable, is a zone, is an examinable, and is of type object item. Yeah, this is not too straightforward if you don't know it. This is what happened, like I said, during the game jam. And I've made a post-jam version, which I want to show you, at the end of this code review. We're almost through, I would assume. But I changed this layout here because this is not something to wrap your head around easily. But yeah, again, just to hone it in, interactable is a child of, zone, we got zone. A child of zone is interactable. A child of interactable is the object examinable, and the child thereof is object item, and all actual items are children of that. I hope this makes sense. So, interactable. What does happen in the interactable? Well, first, it got a name that is unnamed interactable, so that each time that I know that I'm interacting with something that doesn't have a name, it's called unnamed interactable there. So the base name is just name, so it got an init color and then focus color. So when you walk closer to something and it's you get, like I said, into its proximity, then it lights up yellow, but only those things that you can pick up. And this is here, I'm just setting the color. And then we got interact empty, interact fail, and interact success. And this is when you interact with something, as I've said before, when you interact with an interactable, all you say is, I want to interact with you, and it's up to you what this means. And I got different strings there, or different events set, in a sense. So if whatever you're interacting with is empty, because it's a container, you can say it's empty. Or if the interaction failed, then it will say not possible, but it will determine by itself what it means that an interaction has failed. Let's have a look at the step of these interactables. First, we just assign the name to its base name, and if it's in focus, like I said, whatever this means, the player, when you get in, when you collide with something that's interactable, you will set its in focus equals true. So when the player gets in proximity, well, then it's in focus. So, and if it's in focus and colliding with the player, then the current color is a focus color. So because it's in focus. Otherwise, I just hit a debug message and it says focus lost. Here we go. If it's in focus and the player says, I want to interact with this, check if interaction is allowed. And it counts up, there's an internal value for each thing that you could interact with. It counts how many times the player has tried to interact with it. I don't think that I used it, but sometimes it's helpful, especially in an adventure game where you want to interact with something and the first time you look at it and it says like a paragraph of text, and next time it's much more terse that you don't have to read each time. For example, the player says, oh, look at this, I haven't seen this. This is a red stick. The next time you look at it, you don't want the player to see, oh, I haven't seen this before, because clearly they have looked at it like 3 times already and it's not new to them. So this is why I count the number of interactions. Same thing is with do examine. Well, then is examined equals true and we do examine false. I just have it here essentially as a stub because this gets overridden, and yes, I know this is going to be a bit of a clusterfudge and how I did this. Again, it's game jam code. But otherwise, if it's not in focus, then in focus is false and the current color resets to white. And if we draw it, we just draw it at the current location and with the current color, yellow if it's in focus or white if it isn't. Again, this is all very abstract of an interactable. What is the difference between an examinable and an interactable? The interactable is something that you can interact with in principle, whatever interactions means. And an examinable is something that you can interact with only by examining. I hope this makes sense. Essentially in the game, can I switch back to the game or have I closed it? I have closed it already. Examinables are some things that you can walk up to and it says those are my nodes, this is the hull breach, this is a bit of debris, but you can't pick it up like the domino key or the memory core or anything like this. So this is the difference, at least for this game, between interactable and examinable. So examinable, there are certain objects that are, like I said, concrete implementations. But let's have first a look at the abstract class. So first thing here is event inherited, means it inherits everything from its parent. The parent is object interactable. So everything that we've seen here before, here in the create event, gets inherited also by the object examinable. The only things that get overridden or get added in terms of variables are here the name examined and the examine text. This is, like I said, it's a bit confusing and I've cleaned this up quite a lot. So this is just game jam code. So here in the step event, it's pretty much the same thing as above. I more or less copied the code over because I didn't know how much I would reuse or how little I would reuse from object interactable. So this is just mostly a copy of the code with some changes. So again, if the player exists and the player is in range, we change the color to the focus color, otherwise we lost the focus. But it's okay, but now it's a bit more concrete. Interacting on an examinable means we examine it. So the interaction, when we interact with, we say do examine equals true. And this is now where this do examine code block gets executed. And what does it do? It creates a text box with a name as the headline of the text box and the text as the examine text. And then it switches its name to name examined. If you recall, when I played the game, let me show you again. When I first interact with the nodes and I look at those, it only says nodes here. And when I interact with them, it switches to Anomaly SCP-LD47. So this is the name examined. And like I said, I thought this is nice that you look at something and you don't know what it is. You examine it and then you have a much clearer thing what it is. It's a piece of paper. Oh no, it's my to-do list. And then you refer to it not as the piece of paper, but your to-do list. I think this makes sense. And this is pretty much the only difference between the interactable and the examinable. Again, the examinable is a bit more concrete. And now for the actual really concrete things, for example here, the live support. And here in the create event, it inherits everything that we've inherited before, but now here is the concrete implementation. The name, it says now live support unit. The name interacted is live support unit online. Examine before, it's off. I mean, I wouldn't do much against, but then interact success is it's working again. And examine after, at least I don't have to worry about run. So you can pretty much guess what this means. So first is when we interacted with it. So first the name is live support unit. Then we switch it on. It changes its name to name interacted. We examine it. It's off. Then we interact with it successfully. Then it's working. And examine after means what is the string we read after the examination was an we've already seen this interact success. And yeah, the base name is the name. It's a live support unit. And yeah. And as for the step event here, again, this is what happens when I'm interacting with something very concrete. In this case, it's the live support unit. So again, this is more or less copy-paste, but with some additions. So if we interact with, and here we check in the game control, has the flag for the live support unit already been set? Probably not. And is it not fixed? So apparently we haven't fixed it yet. So then we change the name to name interacted. So now it's online. Then we play the sound we get oxygen, and we set the flag there. And yeah, we play a sound. And the same thing is here. We also play a different sound here. And if it's not fixed, we create a text box with examine before. And if it is fixed, we create a text box with examine after. Again, examine before is it's off, examine after. At least I don't have to worry about running out of oxygen again. I'm really sorry that this is a bit convoluted, because like I said, this is one of the lines you shouldn't step, where I have content that is those strings there combined with the logic. But again, it looks like it's directly inherited, but it's just copy pasted with additions. So yeah, game jam code. Again, I'm sorry, in the other version, in the post game jam version that I've started, I made things much more tidier, especially when it comes to these kinds of inheritance problems. Okay. Pretty much the same thing happens here with let's just have another look at the locker, because this is a container. So the name is Global Seas Locker. Again, we assign names randomly in the beginning. So this is why I always have to make sure I internally named all the persons, the cast of this horrible little play, A, B, C, and D, and only refer by them by their global value, global variable. So that no matter what name they end up with having in the end, it's always, for me in the code, it's global C. So we interact, we see it, and it's someone's locker. Before we interact with, before having success, it says it's locked. C probably locked it with their key. On success, we can say it's a data memory. I can read it on the computer. And if we examine it after success, well, it's empty. So fixed in this case, like I said, fixed can mean anything. If you the live support unit, of course, you can fix it. In this case, since it's a container, fixed means it has been emptied, or in this case, it has been opened. So yeah, it's like I said, I'm really sorry that this doesn't make sense, but I only want to use one variable there. So here in the step event, if it's in focus and it just changes color, and if we want to interact with it, and the player is not holding something, but the player is not holding nothing, and the player is holding the domino key. So this is very, very precise. Well, not precise. Very. What's the opposite of abstract? It's very concrete. There we go. It's a very concrete thing that's happening here in code. Again, like I said, it's not the right place, but yeah, I'm just checking if the player is currently holding the domino key, and if yes, then we pop up the text box, play the sound clip, and if the player is holding nothing right now, then they pick up what is inside this container. Otherwise, if the player is holding something, they drop what they are holding and then they pick up what is in this box. Again, this is just a very special case for this thing here, or otherwise we just have here this text box with examine before and examine after. And for pretty much anything that you can work with, and you can probably now guess why you can't interact with many things in the game in the final Ludum Dare version, because it's a hassle. It's a hassle to implement this like this way. And finally, we have this beautiful thing here that is object item, of objects that you can interact with, that you can examine, and that you can pick up. Those grayed out things means they are just directly inherited here from examinable and from interactable, but there is just one thing that's differently for object item, and that is when you pick it up, it plays a sound, and the interactions, of course it adds interactions. And again here, if the player is holding nothing, it gets picked up, and if the player is holding something, they drop the other thing, whatever this may be. Again, I can't directly override this code in the children. I need to copy this code and just change certain portions, and this is, as you can guess, horrible. Like I said, I changed it in the other version. So let's have a concrete examination. Let's have here the domino. So when we create the domino, everything gets inherited. Wonderful, so many emails. The base name is domino. When we examine it, oh, it's a domino key. If we can't interact, I can't, but if it's successful, then we say mission specialist sees domino shaped key, because there is no way to fail to pick up something, at least not in this game. So if we interact with it, the step again is just the inherited of what we have here. Whatever it is that we have, we hold it, we give it the player, we put a reference to the player that they are holding it, and if the player is holding anything, was holding anything before, whatever they were holding, we drop it at the coordinates where the player is currently now, and then we pick up the current item. So this is what's being inherited here from in this step event. So essentially, I forgot to override this, or I didn't need to override this, but this could be grayed out as well. So yeah, this is how items are handled in there. And in this case, because the game's progression is more item based, there are some global flags, but what I found interesting is that it's like the original wizardry from Surtrek from the 1980s. For those who don't know, this game came on floppy disks, and it was like a couple of 100 kilobytes, and they used up every last kilobyte, or byte even, essentially. So this means that you couldn't check if your player party had seen something in the dungeon before that they could access. For example, that they opened a certain door or something, because essentially the game, the dungeon world, was stateless. So how do you gate players' progress then? You do it by having the players give them certain items. So if they possess a certain item, they can advance to something. For example, even if it's a level 1 character who hasn't stepped into the dungeon at all, but for some reason you cheated them with the final amulet of Yendar or whatever it is, that was the MacGuffin of Rogue. Anyway, you cheat this high-end item to the player, and then the player, without even seeing the dungeon, goes to the Grand Wizard, and they say, yeah, here is the amulet you were looking for. And they say, thank you so much for your great sacrifices you made along the way. The game doesn't know that you cheated it. It only knows that, yeah, the player has the item, so the next thing gets opened up. This is exactly what this game does. If you use the right item at the right position, the game gets into that state and knows, okay, so you have the key to the shuttle, because the game doesn't know how many times it was resetted or what happened up to that point, because it's not important. Important is that the player has now the key to the shuttle, and if the player uses the shuttle key, they can escape, no matter what they did before, no matter what the state of the world is. I hope this makes sense, and now this is how I did this without having to resort some sort of database or anything. This is really just object and instance based, and clusterfudge of inheritance that is not very clear, that is very confusing. Okay, like I said, we're almost through with it. Let's have a look at special objects like the doors here, for example. Those doors are a collider, and the doors are only used to the final thing, to the data cores. So I got here the doors are closed or locked, and the doors plus number. This is only the name that are used internally. And here in the step, if locked, then you just say the doors are locked, otherwise they disappear or get destroyed essentially. So this is a very, very haphazard implementation of doors. It's a collider, but once you have the key, it destroys itself and it's not a collider anymore. Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to show you about the items there, because you probably have noticed that I said, yeah, if you are close to the object, if you're in focus of the object, then you can interact with it. But there was never really a value where it says you need to be in 50 pixels radius around this object. So how did I do this? And I did this via here in the sprites of the individual items. For example, let's have a look at this domino key here. And this is the sprite of it. And let's have a look at the collision mask. And the collision mask is here is an ellipse. And when I zoom out, you can see the ellipse is much bigger than the sprite itself. So it triggers a collision if the player is inside this ellipse there in this circle. And this is pretty much how I did it with all the things here. And with the interactable or examinable, again, the collision is as big as is this little yellow thing here. So let's switch off here the zones, but here the interactables. So if you're anywhere inside this orange thing here, then you are colliding with it and you could interact with it. And this is all it takes. So I've been doing this via collision boxes, yeah. Oh, tricky smart, says Red Hermit. Thank you. Well, now I'm proud of it. Okay, now my object effects. I always like to have some sort of visual effects there. In this case, it's just a fade in or fade out. Usually I like to have glows and lens flares and something, or sparkles. And the thing is, how I do effects like this is they are an individual object that you set with certain when you create it, you set certain values or certain options. For example, in this effect, you could say, is it a fade out, a fade in, a flash fade, and so on. So you can see here, effects type is fade in, fade out, flash fade, or none. And by default, it's a fade flash. It's this fade in and out, right? And by default, the color is black, and by default, the alpha is 1. And what you can say when you create something like this effect, as we've seen that the fade in and fade out is, you just say, yeah, it's an effect type of fade in. And here in the step, the object itself handles what to do. So if it's here, the alpha step gets calculated is 1 divided by the fade duration. So if I say it's 2 seconds, or it's the step, the alpha that needs to be added or decreased by 1 step is 1 second times the divided by the fade duration. It's just this little increment there. And again, like I said, the object manages itself. So I just want to say, let's say here, we want a fade out. A fade out means we see everything and then gradually the image goes to black. So I just create this object and say it's of type fx fade out. This means here when I initialize it, the alpha is 0. Of course, it's this big black thing over everything is invisible. Then we switch it to visible, and then this switch statement here happens each frame. So each frame, if it's of type fade out, then we add a little bit of alpha to this to the entire alpha. And if the alpha is greater than 1 or equals 1, then this fade out has completed and the instance essentially destroys itself. And this is pretty much how I like to do this kind of fade ins, fade outs. You just create an object that draws everything, and once the effect is done, it destroys itself, so you don't have to manage it. What could be improved about this is to have some sort of messaging system. For example, that if it's a fade out, that the object says, hey, whoever ordered the fade out, it's complete now and I'm done. So maybe have a messaging system or just some sort of telling other objects, maybe that I could maybe say, okay, first do the fade out and then do this and that. Maybe have some sort of effects queue or something, so that once it is done, this effect, then it says, okay, I'm done, the next effect could trigger, for example. But yeah, for this game jam thing here, all I needed was fade in, fade out, and this flash fade that it fades in. So a flash fade essentially is a fade in followed by a fade out to a certain color. And this is, if effects type is fade flash, yeah, it does the same thing that it does here for fade out, while it fades out to a certain color. And once it's done, once alpha is greater or equal to 1, now it's of type fade in. And then, well, it doesn't make any sense. Now first it fades in and then it fades out. Yeah, either way it works. Either way it works. And the same thing you could do with glow, with sparkles, or with some things like particle systems, where it just creates a particle system and you say, yeah, I want this kind of particle system. You figure out how it should look like, and then all you do is you create it, you add it to an enum, and then have the switch statement do this. And again, you only have one object, and depending on the enum, it figures out itself and it manages itself what it should do. Also works for lens flares, by the way. Alright, Hermit says, so alpha is 1 as max is a GameMaker variable, as opposed to having to go to 255. Yes, alpha is from 0 to 1 in GameMaker. So alpha 1 is opaque and alpha 0 is transparent. Yes. Yeah, this is some things, different programs count differently. Some go from, like GameMaker, from 0 to 1. Others go the 8-bit value. Others go from 0 to 100. Who knows? My question might not make sense. Just curious if all you have to worry about is 0 to 1, or if... okay, yeah, by the way, you can also have an alpha that is greater than 1. It wouldn't do anything, but sometimes you can, or less than 0, which sometimes could be a lazy way to delay the alpha. But you, for example, you want a fade out that takes 1 second, but you want this fade out to happen after 1 second. So you have 1 second that doesn't happen anything, and then after 1 second the fade out happens. What you do, you set the alpha to -2, and then count down. So once at -1, that's the thing, because then once alpha nothing happens until it gets decremented or incremented until it's at 0, and then things start to happen. So this is, like I said, a very lazy way to do things like delays before something alpha related happens. Okay, pretty much done here. This rotator effect, like I've shown you before, this rotating spaceman there, or space suit corpse person. All this object does here, this is, like I said, this is just the default sprite, is the astronaut here that I selected. So click, there we go. So the rotation speed there is just a random rotation speed between -0.5 and plus 0.5 divided by 1 for some reason. The sprite is, of course, the sprite that which we assign, and the rotation is a random rotation. This is just the starting rotation. And all it does here is, with each step, it adds this rotation speed that was determined randomly in the beginning, and it draws itself with this rotation. There we go. This is all that this thing does. Again, it's an object, and just by setting the sprite, you define how it should look like. And again, this is what happens here in this creation code. You just say sprite is sprite debris. I could also say sprite is sprite player. Let's try this, for example. Sprite player dead. That we have a cute little dead kitty rotating in space. Let's give this a try. And there is the dead kitty rotating in space. And this is really all there is to this rotator there. And finally, the one thing that I always want to cheat myself around is doing text boxes that they look nice, because in Unity you can really set up prefabs, and in GameMaker I think this is the biggest thing that I miss in GameMaker is that you can make some sort of prefab where you can just combine certain sprites, strings, and scripts together, even with a hierarchy or something that you just can create also programmatically, and there you can't. So I have to do the text box differently. So how to do a text box? Again, a text box has a headline, a content, and this little line that says hit enter to continue. So the headline font, headline color, then the text, the content has a color or a font. Then we set the horizontal align and the vertical align and the margin from the sides. Essentially, it's just drawing things up in Photoshop and then doing the measurings there and then trying to recreate it here in code. So middle is also usually something that I get programmatically, or that I can always use the variable middle, whatever it will be. In this case, it's the middle of the playing field without sidebar, so this is pre-calculated. But especially if you have, or if you offer your players to have some sort of a variable screen width or screen height or any sort of variable width or aspect ratio, you want to recalculate what you say as middle, top, bottom, that you don't have to calculate it each step. You want to do something, just once it's changed, and then middle will always be the correct value. So, and here, yeah, the box frame, the frame color is gray. Then the close font, it just says hit space or enter to close. And here again, we have here the color text highlight. This is a global color. You can see here, this one is gray, this one is black. I didn't follow through with really having my color scheme set in a global variable set that I could change as I was developing. No, I settled on aqua, yellow, black and white for the whole thing, essentially. And here, yeah, close Y, close X. This is really just where this close string, that it's centered, but always at the bottom of this box. Okay, so what happens here in the step event? If here we just look at the game control, again, this control object is the game master essentially. And then we just, first thing is we check if this global game control has an active text box. And if it has an active text box and we just created a new text box, well, we delete this current text box because apparently there already is a text box, so that's it. But the other thing is if there is no text box, or if the text box that is active is not the current one, that's the line of code. So if the current text box, if the text box that the game control knows that is the current text box, there can only be one text box. It's like a Highlander, and the input control says we've confirmed something. The text box says, oh yeah, if you confirm, that would be me, whatever this is, I consume this confirm event. And by confirming, I play this little bleep sound and then destroy myself. So, okay, but what creates these text boxes? I've never created an object that says create text box. No, I've called a script. And a script essentially is like a function. And you can see here I don't have many scripts. I have here scripts helpers, and I think in the text box somewhere there should be the script. I think the script helpers, and inside this helpers, yeah, I got only one function, and this is script text box. And it takes two arguments, the headline and the content. And here it happens, there's just a local variable, a temporary variable that says TB for text box. So we create a new text box. Doesn't matter where, because the text box object is not concerned where in the room it is. It always will draw the text box in screen space where it should be drawn. The headline is the headline we give it here, and the text is the content we give it here. And all we do say is now at this point, hey, global game control, there is a text box active, and the ID of this text box is the one that we just created. And there you have it. And again, the text box itself handles what it should be doing, what it should do when the global input control says confirmed. The confirm key is now true for one frame. The text box says, like I said, hey, that's me. I go away now. And then the game control knows, okay, there is no text box currently active anymore because the reference doesn't exist. okay, this means the text box has finished, so I can activate the player again. And when the player is active, the player, also the game knows, okay, it now needs to count down to the anomaly. And also if the player is draining or is oxygen, is losing oxygen, also this gets set in motion. It's like I said, it's like dominoes falling into place one after the other. The thing is, maybe you want this, maybe you don't want this when you program. In the end, it's all about making things extremely clear so that ideally someone who's new to the project knows just from looking at the code what is going on where. And with game jam code, this is why I'm making this video. Okay, and I think we've pretty much through with everything. So effects, module ID, pickup, rotator, we have the text box here, the game control, the interactables. Again, shuttle, the shuttle just checks if you have the oh my god, where am I? The shuttle just checks if you have the right item, and once you possess the right item, then it says, yeah, you've won the game. So if the player is holding object keycard, however they got the keycard, we set the global game state to game state success once, and whatever the game deems as successful will be set in motion from there. And there you have it. This was Anomaly 47, the entire GameMaker code, and I've promised you those few people who are still watching this, probably in another tab, hey, you can come back. There's something to see now. Oh, of course, Unicorn, thank you. Remco. There's something to see now. And this is the post-jam version that I've been working on. If I can find it. Oh, Red Hermit played, applause for bits. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. So there we got the current version, the post-jam version, where I tried to give it a bit more atmosphere by introducing colored light sources and so on. So just a quick look here to show you how this, where do I have my objects? That I still have this interactable here, but you can see there is no examinable anywhere. And this interactable is of a zone, and all other things are of type interactable. And when we create here something, it inherits this event, and here also in the step event, it's much cleaner now in terms of inheritance. Again, it's just something to make my life easier while I'm working on this. Okay, so what is there to see? How does it look differently? And you can see here clearly it's much moodier, and it got here flickering light sources, and I spent way too much time working here on the light source. The camera now is sluggishly following the player around, which is nice. And yeah, everything is shrouded in shadow. And also there's the star field in the background as we walk around. And yeah, did I have here different colored light sources we have here? So the main power generator. And let's have a look at the live support, which should be green now. Yeah, this, like I said, I just wanted to make it a bit more interesting, a bit moodier, so that it looks like there's some sort of weird fog hanging there around the station. That it has a bit more of this alien feel. Oh, by the way, if you hit, what was it, shift, everything that can be interacted with lights up, because this is really something that test players said that they really want. And also some things that you have interacted with become yellow, so that you know what you've seen already. And I think this is quite neat to really, yeah, to help players understand what is important for them to be looking at and what is not. And also you see here probably the player itself has this slight little glow around them. So there's the roll back, the loop, just to show you the other side here. Again, I had some fun here with those light sources. And here now, I've forgot to enable here this occluder here, but it got colors and everything. And the thing how I managed to do this is there is no actual lighting, of course, happening. This is more or less drawn in Photoshop. And the hardest part, well, it was a lot of trying around, was working with blending modes, because you can see here some sort of aliasing happening. Yes, this is because I have on top of the entire station, I render a low res version with only the colors that gets blended on top of everything. And let me show you this image that I put on top of everything. I think I have it here in the effects. Light additive. Yes, this is the entire station, the color, not the colors, but the brightness of the station. And underneath those, I have colored light blobs that I just positioned around. That is here called Light FX Multiply. I think this one is what I have on top of everything. So it's not this light blobs there, but currently this is drawn in Photoshop. And it's much smaller because, of course, when you scale it up, everything blends together. Only, where's my mouse? There we are. And yeah, it has this nice gloomy feeling there. And the light sources themselves, where do I have them? Probably here under effects, lighting, and parallax light fixture 1. There we go. So this is just the sprite of the light, but when we draw something, it draws itself. And this is where I thought it would have really come in handy if I had some sort of prefab there, where it's just not just the light source, but also the glow and how it spreads. Because you can see here, this is just the glow and the shine, and it's just a sprite width, get sprite width, set sprite width, the image scale, and so on. What does this do? By the way, here, this flickering is way too verbose for what it actually is. Because it has a cycle to it, the flickering, for how long it stays. It's not just random on and off. It's a little bit sluggish. It blends together these on-off states, that it's like it's fading in and fading out over a couple of frames and so on. So I typed the word flicker way too often in this block of code there. Yeah, and this light source, how it shines, this is also just a sprite, because here this is how the light shines, and this gets just given a color and added on top. And yeah, this is essentially really how I arrived at this pretty cool, I have to say, pretty cool, pretty moody lighting there. And yeah, what took just the longest really was just trying to get the blending modes correctly, that the player, I'm not quite sure how I like it that the player here vanishes underneath the light, but again, it has to do with this additive glow thing here that's going on. So it's not perfect, but I like it quite a lot, I have to say, because it looks so much better. And also the lights here, for some reason, they remind me a bit of the Alien game, probably because of this streaky glow. Yes, and that was Anomaly 47, the entire code review plus the post-jam version. Let me switch back to the full camera. Hi, it's me in big. And yeah, thank you so much for your attention, for those who are still there. I have 7 viewers, Twitch tells me, and this is more that I would have guessed, because like I said, code reviews are inherently boring unless you follow it. And if you follow, I mean, it makes sense, but my code doesn't really make a lot of sense. But like I said, again, if you're watching this because you want to make sense of what the hell was happening in my code, there you go, and I'm sorry. Okay, in the chat, Remco++ said 1 minute ago. Okay, so I'm not too late. I like the lighting. What I did in one of my LD games was have a separate bitmap I drew to each step, then invert the alpha so I could do dynamic lighting and then draw that over the other sprites, but that wasn't in GameMaker. But that sounds, on one hand, elaborate and pretty clever, I have to say. This is cool. So fake dynamic lights, this is cool. And Red Helmet says, excellent additional features and finishing touches. Yeah, I want to add something to it, but in the couple of weeks prior, like I always bitch about how much I have to do at work, but it really it was just relentless. And then this event that I had to attend to last week, where I slept 2 hours and then was completely wasted. And I didn't get back to it because I want to really, for now, I have to focus my creative energies now. And I had a job, well, not a job, a side gig also, and it didn't work out. But then again, I'm not too unhappy about it not working out, because sometimes you have clients that get very complicated and drain a lot of your energy, and then you really think, yeah, is it worth it? And I figured out, no, it was not worth it. So at least now I feel like I could relax a bit more and recharge my energies, that I can finally get back to editing the Ludum Dare 46 post-mortem, because it's going to be really good, and I like how it's coming along a lot, and I want to finish it, of course, and then Ludum Dare 47, and who knows. But good / bad / kinda okay thing is that there's going to be a hard lockdown in Austria starting on Tuesday at 0 a.m. What is this? Yeah, at midnight on Tuesday. So I probably have more time at home. But yeah, it depends on how much work I have to do. But at least I can't escape to any cafe because they are all closed. Retirement says, could we see the DAW save of the music batch? Of course, yeah, understandable if you don't want to, but I've been streaming quite as long as we see it in the postmortem. The music, of course. Of course. Let me get, where do I have it? Reason. As always, the music I make in Reason. If I can find it. There, since the new icon, this little blob here, it's hard for me to find it. Okay, so let me bring in the synthesizer window and the rec window and the mixer window. Anomaly music title. This was the last project that I made with this anyway. So let me make this a bit bigger. It's not that long, but of course I probably need to switch the audio hardware, otherwise you probably can't hear it. Where are my preferences? There they are. Okay, cool. Audio, MME speakers. I think this should do. Plain background. Yes. Okay, so I haven't listened to this myself in quite a while, so it's just a lot of synthesizers there piled on top and a drum kit. So where are things happening? Oh, okay, so this is the title, just the title track, but we probably want to hear the in-game loop if I'm correct. Don't forget to switch screen. All right, sorry, thank you. This doesn't make a lot of sense when I'm moving images around. Oh, look, it's me again. This was stupid. There we go. Sorry. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so you're probably more interested not in the title theme, which is just a couple of seconds, but probably in the, there we go, and the in-game loop. So I need to close this. No, don't save. There we go. So since it's loopable, I've just copied 3 times so that I can make a seamless loop from that all. I got all the tails of the reverb and so on for the looping point. Yes, so this is the in-game music track. So I'm just layering here 3, mostly working here with presets. And there is my latex, what's it called? Bass machine. And here, Interstellar, there is it's just a pad there on top of each other. And now here, when the bass comes in the second time, it also got this fat Moog bass. It says here. So we got here Moria. It's a preset. It's not mine. Just some to juice it up. Some pads. And here I got stacked 2 square, well, I think it's not even a square, it's 2 sawtooth bass files. So now here the bass really starts. Then we get here some faint ghost pads there. And here we got the plain rock drum kit there. So this is one of the drum kits that I've been using for quite a while, so that I don't have to program the drums. Essentially just say verse, 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 fill 1, verse, verse, chorus 1, and so on and so forth. And this is here the lead. This is my indie game that I like to use. My indie game synthesizer, and yeah, the notes are very, again, it's always D minor, because that's the only thing that I can do. And look at this, I even got the Konami bells. Where's my mouse pointer? So those are called Konami bells because I needed them once for a Konami logo homage. And there we are back at the pad. And the black hole is really just a deep effect synthesizer. And one of my favorite synthesizers is this JP8 string here on the frequency modulation synthesizer on the DX8. Is this sound. I like this. This is so 80s. Yeah, so it's just something that I really didn't spend a lot of time on. But yeah, since when I don't have a lot of time, game jams, it means I use a lot of presets, even my own presets, like this indie game or Konami bells that I have. And the other thing is that I stick to the only, well, apart from C major, the only scale that I know that is, like I said, it's just so ingrained D minor because it always looks dark and gloomy, and yeah, this is what I fall back to unless I'm doing guitar stuff, which is always E major then because I'm tuned on E. So again, yeah, it's really nothing that exciting, but I like how it turned out. And it's building. I wanted to keep it a bit longer, but then the one thing that I thought was important, since I wanted to have the game or the music in tandem with the game is, and you have this ticking clock essentially. So this is why I made the speed at 120 BPM, 120 beats per minute, so that you have really this like metronome ticking style that even when you look at the countdown and it goes down 3, 2, 1, it goes in tandem with the music, which I thought was really cool. Fabulous mix. Oh, thank you. I didn't do a lot with the mix. It's just panning there. And did I use any kind of EQs? I don't even think I did. No, the EQ curves for all the individual tracks, I didn't bother with EQ. So I was just happy with how the synths sounded on their own. Love the square wave bass hits. The minimal use of them makes them stand out even more. Yeah, with bass, I love this. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love this bass very much, and I always overdo it. And I really had to restrain myself that it's really just these very accentuated hits there. And once it sounds pretty cool on itself. And when I also add it here with the Moog bass, let's go skip further. There, solo. This is just the Moog now. Okay. Oh, here no. Okay. Now I don't know where I hit solo. There we go. Oh, I like this so much. This is like electronic metal to me for some reason. And the cool thing is, I like it if it's slightly detuned, that it slightly slips out of sync. This makes it sound really badass. So, yeah. But again, yeah, it's not one of my best mixes or anything. But I really like once I had down this instrumentation. Where do I have it? Resources. What I like best is the cue once you beat the game. Maybe I make a song out of this one. Where is it? Unicorn Bob, Detroit. I can't find it right now. I can't find it right now. But I have it somewhere in there. But again, this cue once you beat the game is one of my favorites, I think. Maybe it's in the game directory. Yeah, never mind. I should update Reason anyway. So yeah. Thank you so much. Glad I could shed some light onto my music making. Again, I think it took me 1 hour, 1.5 hours. It was not as long as you might expect it to be, but longer than necessary. But yeah, polishing. Again, I think the title screen sums it up, because I think I had the title screen before I had anything else. It has music and it has a 3D rendering, and I spent too much time in Photoshop painting in those blue reflections, blue specularity things there. So yeah, there we go. Okay, so it is 5 past midnight and I've been streaming for 3 hours again. So code reviews always take a bit longer than I anticipate them to be, because everything is straightforward. It's just a couple of lines of code, but then with all those weird inheritance things that are going on, yeah, I don't blame anyone who didn't stick around. So I really appreciate my 7 viewers that I have that they did. And oh, look at this, it's Remco++ even thanks me for the stream. I'm assuming again you're being sarcastic. So again, Red Hermit says, well, even if it's not one of your best mixes, it's a great mix and helps secure that 3rd place in mood. Yeah, I'm still a little bit surprised that the mood was that good, but again, I think it's just this ominous music that does a lot of the heavy lifting, because the visuals, yeah, it's just this. So yeah. So yeah, again, thank you so much. Next week, I don't know what I'll be streaming, but there's always something creative to do. And even if not, I thought maybe I'd do some more game streams in between, where I'm just the last couple of weeks, like I said, I was so exhausted, and I've been rediscovering the good old I always want to say Counter-Strike. No, it's Command and Conquer, which I played. I played the Command and Conquer demo, which just 2 missions that came on a magazine disc. I played it obsessively in 1995, and then I played obsessively Red Alert, Command and Conquer Red Alert in 98, and realized I have never beaten the game back then, because it was always too hard for some reason. And now that I buckled down, I think I've been getting better at games, which is great. So I finished the Red Alert campaign, all the maps, and now I'm doing the same thing for the original Command and Conquer. And my god, those tanks are slow. It's... But the original Command and Conquer campaign is much harder than the Red Alert campaign. Sometimes, since it's a real-time strategy game, the game loop essentially is, okay, trying to fight off against the odds. My god, you're being relentlessly pummeled by the enemies until you manage to kill or get rid of all their harvesters, and then they run out of resources and they can't produce any more items, but you can, because your harvesters are well guarded, and then the tide turns, and then it's just wiping out their base. And the point with not Counter-Strike, the first Command and Conquer, is it took me quite a long time per each mission to get to the point where I'm finally getting the upper hand there. But hey, I was this close to rage quitting, but I haven't, and afterwards I feel pretty confident about my skills as a general in a futuristic battlefield where the harvesters go through the enemy base because it's the shortest distance to the Tiberium fields. Anyway, maybe I do a gaming stream, just chatting and playing some games. Who knows? So again, thank you so much for watching. I still have some water to finish, so Unicorn and Red Hermit unnecessarily thanks me for taking extra minutes to explain the music details. Hey, it's a pleasure to have people who are interested in how this looks on my end, to really share my process. So yeah, you're very welcome. I'm always happy to share with the things that I came up with. And thanks for the great stream, very educational. I might be able to use GameMaker now, probably stick to Unity. Yeah, probably stick to Unity. Unity is, I think, much more powerful. With GameMaker, it's just me that I'm so used to GameMaker, and I can, well, I'll joke, I can do it in my sleep, because sometimes I dream of GameMaker code, especially after Ludum Dare experiences. But like I said, the lack of the language being properly object-oriented, once you've tasted object-oriented programming, you don't want to waste your appetite with things that are GameMaker. The other thing is, like I said, you can script the editor in Unity, and you can create prefabs and then use those prefabs programmatically and so on and so forth. And this is something that feels so annoying with GameMaker. And the other thing is, deploying to different platforms on Unity is super easy. It's just 2 clicks when you get the right modules installed. In GameMaker, I think you need to compile to Mac. I'm not quite sure if I get this right or if it's still the case, but if you want to compile to Mac, first you need to pay extra to get the compilation ability, to get the license. I think it's $100, or for HTML5 it's even higher than that. Then you need a Mac with Xcode installed, and you need a network connection to said Mac over a certain port, and then do the compilation there or something. It's just tedious, and this is why my games never come out on Mac when I do them in GameMaker, because with Unity you just say, for Mac it's not tested, and then I tested on a very weird variant of Linux that is CentOS at work, and my game works even with sound. It's crazy. So thank you, Unity. So yeah, my bottom line would be to stick to Unity, but GameMaker is wonderfully to get started, because you can do just everything by drag and drop and don't have to write a single line of code. But when you get more proficient with writing code, you can substitute all your drag and drop actions with code, and in the end you just do it as I do, just only code. And then at a certain point you feel like you hit your head everywhere, because GameMaker is getting too small for you, especially if you want to do anything with 3D graphics. You can do 3D in GameMaker, and it's amazing what people manage to pull off with 3D in GameMaker. But Unity is all about 3D from the ground up, and it's not just some weird hack that sits on top, because you got, viewport 3D, there it starts in Unity. So yeah, I would stick to Unity, because Unity is fun on a whole different level, but then again it's also so intimidating. So yeah, in the end, cool, that was it. I don't know, as always, how to properly end stream, so I will try to keep this short and just find my right slide that says thanks for watching. And I wish you a great week. If you're watching this in Austria or in other country where there is another hard lockdown, at least I stocked up on coffee beans because I was being clever. I wish, all things considered, have a great week, and I will see you next week, probably, most likely. And Red Hermit says, another 800 bits, and I always love those little unicorn icons of Twitch. It's really cute. Have a fantastic week. I hope lockdown goes okay for you. Work is peaceful, CNC is epic, and you have what feels like a ton of spare time to dive into all your creative projects and other hobbies. This is so nice of you. Yes, I wish that too for myself, and you know what? I wish it all for you, for every one of you who is watching, and even for those who aren't watching. Yes, even to those to-losers and the haters out there, I also wish you a wonderful, happy, great week. Have some time for yourself, have some time for creative projects, make some games, have fun, and see you around next week. And may the unicorns bless you with their unicorn flakes. Is this an ending, closing money? Yeah, that will do. That will do. What do you say? She says it's crap. So see you next week.